We're good to go. I assume we're good to go. Welcome, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order on this day, Tuesday, June 21st at 6 p.m. As I can see, all members are present. I would like to first congratulate all the newly elected committee and board members. Congratulations to you. And I would really like to start off with the recent tragedy we had here in town. I would like to take a moment to honor a dear lifelong friend, Brian Armando, and beloved community member who recently passed away. My heart goes out to his wife and his two daughters and his remaining family members. Brian, you will surely be missed. I know I will miss you, my friend. Could we please observe a moment of silence for him and his family? Okay, thank you, everyone. Again, Brian, you'll surely be missed. I know by me. So what I would like to do now, since we've gone through the call to order, I'd like to ask Christine, our town clerk, Christine, to do the swearing in of the newly elected board members, Richard Dolliver and Heath Willett. Is Christine there? No? Yes, there she is. Can you hear us, Chris?
I'm here.
Okay. Are you ready to do the swearing in? It's 1.2 on the agenda. Are you ready for that, Chris?
Yes, I am.
Okay, there you go. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm gonna do Rick's first. I'm just alphabetical order. So can you see me, Rick?
I can.
Do you have the oath of office?
I do.
Okay, so you're just gonna repeat after me.
Sure.
I state your
I,
name,
Richard Dolliver,
do swear
do swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
so long as I shall continue a citizen thereof.
so long as I shall continue a citizen thereof.
I state your name,
I, Richard Dolliver,
do swear
do swear
that I will faithfully discharge,
that I will faithfully discharge,
to the best of my abilities,
to the best of my abilities,
the duties incumbent on me as a select board member,
the duties incumbent on me as a select board member,
according to the Constitution and the law of the state,
according to the Constitution and the law of the state,
and that I will in all respects
and that I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the town charter and ordinances of the town of Ogunquit, so help me God.
observe the provisions of the town charter and the ordinance of the town of Ogunquit, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, now Heath, are you ready?
I am.
Okay. I state your name,
I, Heath Willett,
do swear
do swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
so long as I shall continue a citizen thereof,
and of this state, so long as I shall continue a citizen thereof.
I state your name,
I, Heath Willett,
do swear
do swear
that I will faithfully discharge,
that I will faithfully discharge,
to the best of my abilities,
to the best of my abilities,
the duties incumbent on me as a select board member,
the duties incumbent on me as a select board member,
according to the Constitution and the law of the state,
according to the Constitution and the law of the state,
and that I will in all respects
and that I will, in all respects,
observe the provisions of the town charter and ordinances of the town of Ogunquit, so help me God.
observe the provisions of the town charter and ordinances of the town of Ogunquit. So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Section 1.3, election of board officers. Chris, if you want to, I'm assuming that's your job. You take that over too. You have the floor.
Yes, so
Okay,
I will
thank you.
now take nominations for Chair of the Select Board. Yes, Selectwoman Perry.
Hey there, I'd like to nominate John Daly as the chair.
And is there a second?
There is a second.
Are there any other nominations? Yes, Selectman Dolliver.
I'd like to nominate Heath Willett as chair.
And is there a second? Second by John.
John Daly, I'd like to second it.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Having none, we will have a show of hands for Chairman of the Select Board for John Daly. All those in favor? 2. All, and now I will take by a show of hands for Chairman of the Select Board for Heath Olet. All those in favor? That being 3. Heath Olet, you are now the Chair of the Select Board.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good
Congratulations.
luck. Good luck.
Good luck.
And I believe at this point, I turn it over to you for the Vice Chair.
Okay,
Oh, I do the, oh, okay, yes, I guess. Is that what I do?
I believe Heath does it as the
Oh,
chair.
okay, okay, gotcha.
okay. Do we have any nominations for our position of vice chair? Rick?
I'd like to nominate John Daly for vice chair.
I s-
And do we have a second?
Second,
Any other nominations for vice chair? All those in favor? Okay, the vote is 5-0. Congratulations, John.
Congratulations, John.
Woohoo.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to working with you, and I look forward to working with this board moving forward in our new capacity. Give me a few minutes. I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous, this being my first meeting, so it's going to take me a little bit of time to get in the swing of things. As we get started, and Bob, I truly appreciate your thoughts and comments on Brian. I was wondering if it would be okay at this time if we give Steve Wilkos an opportunity as the planning board chair, since Brian served on the planning board, an opportunity to say a few words. Would that be okay with everyone?
Absolutely.
Tom, if you could open up Steve Wilkos's line, I believe he is on. Steve, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations to you and Rick. On the front of my binder that holds the Ogunquit zoning ordinance, I have pictures of the current planning board and previous planning boards. Near and dear to my heart is the April 2008 planning board photo of me holding hands with Brian and Muriel. Brian was a dedicated planning board member who always worked to achieve the best outcome for both the applicant and the town of Ogunquit. He was articulate, intelligent, passionate, thoughtful, and transparent. I learned a lot from Brian. Brian loved the town of Ogunquit, and we in turn loved Brian. Our thoughts and prayers are with his wife, Whitney, his daughters, Daisy and Mallory, whom he adored and lived for, his mom, the rest of his family, and his dog, Piper. We will miss you, Brian. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you again, Steve. And our hearts are definitely with the family. And some of you may know there's a fundraiser happening, and if anyone is interested in donating, please let us know and we'll get you the right information to support the family during this time. As we get started, I would just like to check in with everyone to ensure that, or to ask, are there any additional agenda items that you all would, are there any additional agenda items that any of you would like to propose for this evening? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to 2.0, our meeting minutes. If we can take these together, unless someone wants to separate them out. But I'm wondering, is there any discussion for meeting minutes of May 12th and June 2nd? Lindsay?
I was absent on May 12th, so I would have to separate them out. I wouldn't be able to vote for on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Dolliver, did you have a question?
I wasn't present for either one of them, so I won't be voting on either one of those.
Okay. So in hearing Ms. Perry's comments, are there any particular comments on our meeting minutes for May 12th?
John Daly needs you.
Mr. Daly?
I actually have no comments, but maybe this question is for Pat. Pat, since we can watch the meeting, even if we don't attend, can we still vote on it? You're muted.
I would say we're trying to treat these meetings as much as if we were all together. So I'm going to say that you should vote only if you are present.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay, any other comments regarding May 12th? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes for May 12th, 2020?
So moved.
First by Selectman Dolliver. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oops, I'm sorry. The first was made by Ms. Selectman Daly. Do we have a second?
Thank you. Second.
Oh, second?
Second by Ms. Selectman Nguyen. All those in
Thanks, Bob.
favor?
Approved.
Any abstentions? Okay, right. Any nays? Sorry, you guys, I'm trying to figure this out. All right, motion approved, 3 to technically 0. I guess is the way we do that. All right, any comments on our meeting minutes for June 2nd, 2020?
None.
None.
Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve our meeting minutes for June 2nd, 2020?
So moved.
First by Selectwoman Perry. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Daly. All those in favor? Okay, so motion passes with four members who are present, all voting in favor. That brings us on to 3.0 of our agenda, and it is our monthly financial report. And I'm going to turn things over to Pat Finnegan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a brief but significant report because our last meeting was on June 30th, and so we are now in a new fiscal year. I did a preliminary report on what I thought our year-end results were going to be. It's still a preliminary report for year-end. In terms of expenditures, we believe we will end the year at about 98% expended, and so that's a very good point for us to be in. Regarding revenues, you will recall that the tax due date was extended to July 15th. Between between June 30th and July 15th, we took in an additional $500,000 in tax payments. That means this year's tax payments, if you look at it year over year for June 30th, last year we were at 95.2%. This year we're at 96.5%. So a little over 1% better, which is great news. And again, we've always been very appreciative of our taxpayers for being so responsible about paying their taxes. But I do think everybody did appreciate having the additional couple of weeks to pay their taxes through July 15th. While we stay on revenues, we have just started this fiscal year. As you all know, our major funding source is property taxes, but right after that is our revenues from our parking lots. And we certainly built the budget on the basis that we were not going to have 100% capacity or 100% of the people coming to visit Ogunquit as we've been used to seeing in years past. And that would be true. Excuse me. However, for the first 3 weeks of July, we are at 70% of where we were last year at this time. So we've taken in $350,000 versus what we 100% of where we would have been last year, which again is a great start for us to be at this point. You will recall, even though we had 4th of July, we started this year off, the month of July off, as a very cold, cloudy and foggy time. The last weekend and this week, hopefully we're going to recover that quite a bit. And I think on the basis of these results, it shows that if the weather holds, that we will, excuse me, that we will get turnout with people coming to visit Ogunquit, which we certainly hope. And in talking with Visitor Services, Ray and Jean, last weekend was almost a record-setting weekend for us. Saturday was just under being a record-setting weekend, and Sunday was a record-setting weekend for us, or a record-setting Sunday for us. So that's all very good news. We are obviously part of our work at this time of year, ending one fiscal year, starting up the next fiscal year. You will recall that we have transitioned our financial management program and our software program. So that has been a massive undertaking. So I want to thank our treasurer and our deputy treasurer and clerk for all the work that went into that, as well as the entire staff that has been learning the new chart of accounts and making sure that transition could go smoothly. As a reminder, that new software is slated to save us thousands of dollars every year going forward. So we're very pleased about that. We have had preliminary discussions with the auditor. We've signed the audit engagement letter, and we are currently in the pre-audit phase. So I think that is the overview highlights for the 3rd week of this fiscal year. Happy to answer any questions.
Can't hear you.
Thank you, Pat. Does the board have any questions for Pat regarding the monthly financial report? Tom, has anyone raised their hands and or if in the public if anyone's interested in asking questions regarding our monthly financial report, now's the time to raise your hand and be recognized if you have any questions for our town manager on the monthly financial report.
I have one. Oh, never mind. There are no raised hands.
Okay, let's move on to 4.0 of our agenda, the liquor and amusement licenses. People may recall that we are not doing a public hearing for liquor and amusement licenses during this time. So I would like to, if the board pleases, to take up 4.1 through 4.6 on our agenda collectively. And are there any comments regarding the malt regarding 4.1 through 4.6 on our agenda? Mr. Dolliver?
Real quickly, it's probably just an oversight, but on Coastal Wine and Pizza Napoli, I believe there's no police, fire, for CEO sign off on the paperwork. I know there are emails from the fire department stating that they did the inspection, but generally there's a sign off on all of them, and on those two, it appears to be missing. So I just want to have Cheryl double check it and make sure it gets signed off before it gets sent into the state.
Pat, would you like to just take a moment? I know we've encountered this a few times in the last couple of months due to our new process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's just a matter of a delay in the time when the departments are reviewing it, when we get the agenda packet ready. I know that police and the code officer have reviewed both of those. The police chief is, I believe, listening at home. If I've misspoken, I'm sure she will chime in. But to reassure everybody, we don't forward these without the sign off of the appropriate departments. But we do like to keep the process moving. So we try to time it between when we receive the applications and when we have select board meetings and keep things moving for the businesses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Are there any other questions concerning 4.1 through 4.6 on our agenda? Mr. Daly? Mr. Daly, if you wouldn't mind unmuting. Mr. Daly, you're still muted.
Where is Coastal Wine? Can someone just describe where they are?
I
Can you hear me?
believe, yes, I believe they are directly across the street from Bourne Lane on Shore Road. Is that correct, Pat?
Yes.
Okay,
There
Thank
used to
you.
be a coffee shop.
thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Perry?
I don't know if I'm looking at the same packet as Mr. Dolliver, or if I'm looking in the wrong spot, but the application I have for Rose Cove appears to have the sign offs from the police chief and the fire chief. So, I mean, I know we want to move on, but I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right thing.
It appears Mr. Daly has signed off, so I'm not sure he can answer your question in particular, Ms. Perry.
No, Mr. Dolliver signed off.
Sorry, Mr. Dolliver.
Does anyone else have the packet in front of them to confirm? I just was.
Please don't relate me to Rick.
All right. I will look at it later. It's not important. We can move on.
Yeah, I think Pat confirmed that she'll make sure that they are 100% complete before submittal to the state. So
I think the more concern that I had was that I wanted to make sure I was looking at the same packet as everybody else.
You are.
okay, do I have a motion to approve the liquor and amusement licenses in 4.0?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Second, first by Selectman Daly and second by Selectwoman Perry. All those in favor?
Yes.
And the motion passes 4-0. Let the records show that Mr. Dolliver has, for some reason or another, stepped away. Okay, moving on our agenda, we are at 5.0 presentations. And our first presentation tonight is Perkins Cove 03907. And Tom, I believe we're going to open up a couple of people, Amy and Jen, who will be speaking tonight.
She's on. I'm locked out.
I upgraded Amy. I'm not seeing Jen as an attendee.
We're both there together. We're together.
Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, Amy and Jen. Looking forward to hearing more about what you all have going on in Perkins Cove. If you'd like to start your camera, it would be great to see you. If not, we certainly can hear you.
If I can figure out how to do that. Oh, start video maybe.
There you go.
It's the Jen and Amy show. Something good has come out of the virus and the pandemic. The people in Perkins Cove, the businesses and some residents have got together and we've come up with I think, and Jen thinks, a fabulous idea. And it's small, but it's called Perkins Cove 03907. And it's our like ideas are to have picture it and have the bridge, walk it and have the margin away and experience it and show the whole Perkins Cove. And what we've done is we've worked with Pat and we worked with the Ogunquit Rec Department. Pat's been great. She came down and we met. There was about 14 or 16 of us. And we just threw out ideas and things that we would like to do. And Jason Corbin was there and speaking for the rec, mentioned that there was some extra money from the rec and maybe we could do music in the Rotary Park, which we've had twice, and it was very well attended. People on the bridge listening to the music, sitting on the Riverside lawn, sitting at the different restaurants, walking about. It's been absolutely wonderful and we're excited about it. Actually, Lindsay's husband was our first musician and it was fabulous. We all kind of did a Sweet Caroline sing along together. He was great. He was great. We have lots of ideas, and we have new planters in the Cove. We have planters by the booth where the people sell the tickets to park, which makes me so happy because the orange cones really look attractive. So that's great. We have lots of ideas. Jen's going to talk about a few of them and then we will regroup.
We're gonna have music on Wednesday nights and Friday nights. By Jason Corbin arranged it through Parks and Rec. And it'll be from 6 to 8 o'clock every Wednesday and Friday night in Rotary Park. And we're talking to Todd Benita. He's trying to make arrangements to get artists back in the Cove, painting. We're gonna try to get somebody at least 3 to 5 days a week. We're trying to put all that together. Todd's gonna help us to have artists painting in different areas, sometimes in Rotary Park and possibly in other areas, painting around the Cove. We're also trying to, work on planters, pulling weeds, trying to spruce things up a little down there to, make things look better. So that we can eventually, maybe in the next couple of years, be the prettiest cove in Maine and mark ourselves that way. Anything else, Amy?
In the beginning of the virus in April, I kept hearing about how Perkins Cove was a destination. And so as a destination, we need to promote it. And this is a great way for all of us to do it together and work together and advertise together, but also to bring back the history and the beautiful areas in Perkins Cove. And we've deemed this kind of like Operation Beautification so that we can just take what we have, which is amazing, and make it even better and beautiful. And that's what we really want to do. We're not asking for anything except for support.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to the two of you and for all of those in the Cove who have been coming together and thinking through some new ways of moving forward. And I happened to be there in the Cove getting coffee the morning that some of our beautiful planters were being delivered, and things are looking really good. So I appreciate, and we all appreciate you taking the extra step and trying to, not trying to, and for working together to, as you say, to beautify Perkins Cove and to advertise it as well as to promote it. Are there any questions and or comments by the members of the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Nguyen?
just a comment. Nice job, you guys. Way to go, Amy.
Thanks,
You guys
Bob.
You're working in a positive direction. It's awesome. I know you've been waiting a long time, but you took the bull by the horns. I love it. Nice
you.
job. Way to go, you guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Selectwoman Perry?
I wanted to say that one of the highlights down there, obviously I love having Jake down there play. He's my highlight, but the lighting, I love the lighting that's been put up in the trees. And I know that in the past, that's always been sort of a question that we've had on what is allowed in town and what businesses and everybody have been able to do during this time of COVID. I think that we've seen that allowing some of the new items like putting string lights and stuff up has done nothing but make the area beautiful. So I really appreciate that being done, and it does look awesome down there. And it was nice for the first time in a long time seeing people sort of congregate to one central area to just be a part of, not shopping, not that shopping and eating isn't the primary thing that people go down there for, but people were just staying to visit a while, and it was really nice to see.
We're hoping that the music and bringing back some of those things will help people stay longer in the Cove, to linger down there, stay later at night. Used to be years ago there, everything was open till about 11 o'clock at night. Now it's closing up much earlier. So we're trying to keep people down there.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Selectwoman Perry. Selectman Dolliver.
Just a quick thank you, first of all, but to the artists, I remember, for years, John Neal was there, but that little strip right there overlooking Orweed Cove is just such a quintessential artist spot, and to see open air artists again would be fabulous. So if Todd can do it, that would be great. But I think we're all in agreement that the Cove needed a makeover, and there's some bigger plans for the Cove, the seawall, the dredging, the bridge. So hopefully everything will come together and bring it back to how it was. Thank you.
Todd's trying to get a group of artists together, so it won't always be the same one. Have different people there on different days. So.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Like to offer an opportunity to anyone in attendance. If you would like to offer up any comments or questions, please raise your hand. Tom, do we have anyone who's raised their hand?
No raised hands.
Then, Mr. Chair, I'll raise mine if I might.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. I just want to thank Amy and Jen and all of the businesses in Perkins Cove. It always takes somebody to be the spark fire and light that fire. And so Amy certainly has done that and been ably assisted by Jen, but the energy from all of the businesses in Perkins Cove is amazing. And I think that when we think of Perkins Cove, it was an artist colony, and we talk about beautifying Perkins Cove. We couldn't ask for a nicer canvas to start with. And having the wonderful people that make Perkins Cove is where we all start. And Amy's been just a great force of nature in terms of pointing out some very simple things that we could do to liven up the place. And so something as simple as a solar light could make a big difference. So we've got things like that, and the lights in the trees, as Lindsay mentioned. Jen did a phenomenal job taking the planters that the town had, but putting beautiful flowers in them. It made all the difference. And the energy that the businesses have at the Cove is just wonderful. I know it's going to be something that will carry us through for the next millennium. And I think the other thing about the Cove is the businesses that are there, very eclectic, but very artistic, whether it's, their cooking skills or their artistic skills or making things. And I think they've got a lineup of having experiences that people can have when they come to the Cove. Looking around at the beauty is a wonderful thing, but being able to experience it, experience the culture, experience what is Ogunquit, experiencing our history is just so important. And especially as Ogunquit celebrates our 40th and as Maine celebrates our 200th. And since our main stamp is right from that area, it's just couldn't happen at a better time. I hope you guys, I know you are not shy, but I hope you don't get shy and you'll ask for things that you need. And I think that people will step up and want to be part of this. I think it's great. So
Long list of
thank you
ideas.
very
We won't
much.
be shy. Don't worry about that.
So thank you.
And thank you, Pat, for like the last 2 weeks have just been so wonderful in the Cove. We just had so many improvements. It's overwhelming to me because I've been in Pat's office for 2 years every Tuesday, and she hasn't seen me in a couple Tuesdays. So, right, Pat?
I miss you, Amy. I'm glad
Oh,
you're here.
right.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There
Thank
is one raised hand.
Okay. Thank you, Pat.
Mary, you should be able to talk.
Mary, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name and stating the street of your residence.
It's Mary Cat and Harbor Lane in Perkins Cove. And I got to tell you, I'm very excited about all of this because living where we live, we feel very privileged. And the fact that in the middle of the winter, if there's one nice day, the Cove just fills up. And people, it is a destination. And if there's anything I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Amy and Jen, if somebody is interested in either offering suggestions or interested in becoming involved in volunteering to help out wherever, should they be contacting you?
They can come in the candy store any day. I'm there all the time.
And I'm right at the entrance to the Cove. I'm usually outside or somewhere around. So
Wonderful.
And we love anyone who's interested in helping and any ideas. We have a blank palette, sort of.
yeah, we've got a lot of ideas. Just this is a tough year. We know to get, we don't want to take on too much this year, but we've got a lot of great ideas for the Cove.
Well, thank you again, and look forward to having you back in the future to tell us more about what you're doing, and also would love to hear more about what you're thinking about for the future.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, that brings us to 5.2 on our agenda, which is our COVID Community Task Force. And we have Chair Bob Whitelaw with us this evening. Bob, would you like to give us an overview of what your group has been up to?
Yes. Don, hold on 1 second. Okay.
There you are.
There I am. I have a short statement because we haven't really talked in some time. So I'm going to read the short statement, kind of outlines where we've come and where we're going, current state. As everyone knows, the task force continues to meet every 2 weeks and sometimes every week, depending on need. After the July 4th weekend, we met in special sessions so that we could evaluate how the holiday went. Obviously, earlier on, we were charged by the select board to make recommendations on opening amenities in a safe and orderly way. Having made those recommendations and the fact that the select board has acted on those recommendations, the task force now focuses on monitoring the state of those amenities, provides updates on key statistics, gives guidance to those wishing to visit our town via our website portal, which Rick Barber answers a lot of questions about people who want to come here. What are the testing requirements? What are the quarantine requirements? What's open? He does a great job on that. We also provide a venue for experts and authorities to disseminate important information. During our most recent meeting, we had field updates from Lieutenant Matt, representing the police, our code and officer Scott, speaking about activities related to businesses in our community, and Pat Finnegan, who gave us an update on the search for more CSO personnel, which she tells me has led to the hire of 2 new colleagues, which is great news. Pat also updated us on the use of funds from the state, which I'm pretty sure she'll talk more about tonight. Each of these updates has answered many of the questions we have received via our website portal, particularly in the area of rule enforcement. Lieutenant Matt did a fantastic job, and if you haven't seen the meeting, I recommend that you go back and take a look and listen to his part. He really outlined from start to finish all that has happened, all that has transpired, all the difficulties it has, their group has had to work with, and they continue to work for the safety of our town. We also had another visit from Eric Fogg. If you don't know who that is, he leads the COVID-19 testing activities at York Hospital. Eric's updates each week have been a valuable source of information about how to get a test. Also, he provides us with updates on how many tests they conduct, the number of positive results, and what new technologies are being brought online to enhance testing in our county. Eric will be joining our call tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll dedicate a portion of the meeting to discuss some of the things around entering and exiting our various beaches, as well as some concerns around social distancing during high tide. We've had a number of inputs from citizens, guests on these issues, and we're just going to bring them back up for a discussion. We've talked about them on various occasions, and we're going to see if there's anything else that we can do better or make recommendations that we can as a town do better to keep us even more safe. The task force serves at the pleasure of the select board, and we welcome any input from the board members on direction and mission. And so we will have a meeting tomorrow night, and I hope you can all tune in and see how it goes. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Truly appreciate the update and the thorough overview. And for those of you who might have missed the last couple meetings, Bob, I had missed one of them, and Bob and I caught up, and he said, he told me to watch Matt Buttrick's presentation, and that it was a wealth of information and knowledge about how things are going, and in particular what our town is doing around education and enforcement, as well as just thinking about how we approach things from a comprehensive approach. So if you haven't had an opportunity, I would suggest anyone watch at least, at minimum, Matt Buttrick's presentation, but including the whole meeting. Are there any questions that board members have and or comments? Selectman Daley?
Just Bob, how's the module A going? I know that was kind of contentious. Any feedback
it's
on?
Interesting. I'm glad you brought that one up. Some of the inputs we've had have been a little bit negative, but not many around the marginal way currently. I think the requirement to wear masks did a good service for our community. I think that's helping. I will say some of the people who have been, I won't call them negative, but have been giving advice or information have said, yeah, we're not doing so well in certain areas, but we're doing much better in the marginal way. So I would take that as a positive. Tom Orlando will be on the call. He'll be doing the field update in Matt's absence, and maybe he'll be able to tell more tomorrow. I don't want him to talk now because I got to have a teaser for more people to join our meeting. But my sense is, and from looking at marginal way, is doing better.
Thank you, Selectman Daley, and thank you, Bob. Selectman Dolliver.
Mine's a question for Bob, but I guess it's more a discussion with the board and to see if anybody else would be interested in this. From a personal standpoint, I would like the COVID-19 group to look at the implications of us having a meeting at the Dunaway Center. I know the CDC regulations are no more than 50 people. I know sitting at the table, we're more than 6 feet apart. If the if the audience was limited in some way, I think we could, not all of us are super computer literate. Obviously, you guys all saw my screen go black. Something happened. I ran upstairs. I got a different iPad. I think it would be nice to have select board meetings in the Dunaway Center. And if it was something the board would be interested in discussing, and then maybe directing Bob and his group to look into and think about. I mean, if we're having concerts in the park and groups of people gather, I'm just wondering if it's something maybe we could do inside also, safely.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Nguyen.
is this the appropriate time for me to, chime in on that? Or no?
Sure. I think
Yeah.
Mr. Dolliver has put out
Yeah.
and is interested in hearing all of our thoughts.
Okay, so I have mentioned this to Town Manager Pat a few times. I'm not a Zoom fan at all. And where we are, doing all these other things in town and, different things like that, I would love for us as a group to be able to meet in the town hall and social distance, but I'm not so sure if I would want that if there were people, but we can still do the big screen and Zoom and have people participate in that manner. I'm not a technology person either, so I don't know if that's possible, but I would personally like for us all to be in a room where we are kind of together and so on and so forth, because I'm not a Zoom fan. But that again is a question for Bob and the task force, but having people come into a room like that, I'm not so sure if I'd feel comfortable with that. That's it.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank you.
Mr. Daly?
Bob, you don't need to have an iPhone.
What's that?
You don't have an iPhone.
No.
Sorry, I'm joking.
No, it's all right. Thank you for the
Sarah,
joke.
do you have any comments on the thought around asking the COVID task force to think about when or if and when we should potentially move our select board meetings to be live and in person?
Who are you asking?
I was asking you if you had any comments.
I thought you said Pat. I'm sorry. But then she didn't move, so then I realized I was on the spot. I mean, you can look into it. I don't feel comfortable with doing it. I mean, the events that we're doing right now are outdoors, there's ventilation. I know that a lot of restaurants are going inside, and I get that. But if we did move our meetings to indoors, with or without the community, does that mean that we would need to be signing waivers that if we contracted COVID through being in the office, there's no, is it a liability for the town? So I think that if you look into it, I think that's a piece of what I would encourage you to look into. But I mean, or is it optional for us to attend via Zoom or Heath's dog sounds very friendly.
Thank you, Selectwoman Perry. Mr. Dolliver, did you have anything further to add?
Well, to Lindsay's point, that's the questions I'd like the COVID group to look into. If you look at it, it's our job to recommend to look into things, and then it's their job to dig into it, figure out what we do and do not know, and to come back with a report. So I'm just throwing it out there that if we can get a consensus that the board is interested in having the group take on this task. Right now, it appears we have, at least 3 that have said yes. So if we just heard from everybody and then give the COVID group direction, I think that would be beneficial to everybody.
I'd like to ask Pat at this time, as the person who's been overseeing operations and town hall, do you have any comments or thoughts?
I've been looking at what has been going on around other communities as they've been struggling with this issue as well. And a number of them have said they want to do it. They've done it and then they've realized it hasn't gone so well. I think for us, we would want to do it very carefully as it is right now. We have worked really, really hard to keep the Dunaway Center, which is really the place where we work, very safe and sanitized for the people who work here and the people who come in here to do business. We would just want to, I think it is a good idea for us to look at, again, sort of like a reopening kind of thing. When is that the right time? What would it look like? So I certainly think looking at it makes a whole lot of sense. I do think we've got a lot of work to do before we get there. And I think the issue of indoors and outdoors is still very, very relevant when it comes to COVID, as we understand more and more how it is transmitted, and for people to understand that it wouldn't be like your normal meeting. You would still have separations, it would be masks, it wouldn't be like it used to be. So, but I think it is worthwhile to discuss what it would look like and what the timing might be for us to do that.
Mr. Whitelaw, I saw you raised your hand earlier. Did you have a comment for us or something you'd like us to think about?
Well, I think we certainly have the capability to go and look into this. There is precedent. When music, the rec department wanted to do music again, they came to us, we formed a small committee and came up with suggestions on how to do it safely. So there is precedent to look into these kind of things. And I think the task force is designed, and we have health people on there, we have business people on there, residents as well. So I think we have a good cross section of the town, and we could look into it. And I think Pat's right, it's probably a phased approach over time, but at some point we will have to get back together as a group. You will have to get back together as a group. It may not be soon, but it will have to happen. And even when you start going back together, you will have to do things in a phased approach. It won't be like, okay, it's all gone, we're going back together. So I think it makes sense for us to take a look at it.
Coming back to the board, do we have a consensus that we'd like to ask the task force to look into this and come back to us with phases and whether, what data is important and suggestions or recommendations for us to consider?
Sure.
Yep.
All right, Bob, it sounds like we're in consensus that would be something that we'd like the committee to do. I'd like to add, I've been thinking about something. The task force has been amazing at thinking through our immediate needs. I would like to get a better sense, and I think we need to do this sooner rather than later, as we sort of lift our heads and evaluate not only how are things working today, how have things been working within our community the last couple months, and what will things look like in the next couple of months, as well as I'm particularly interested as well in the next year. And I think about our community and all the, I don't know if gears is the right word, but I think we're all intertwined. And whether it is our residents, our seniors, we have folks who are homebound, we have folks who are at risk, our business community, our town employees. I would like us to really start to lift our heads and think about, okay, what do the next 3 months look like? What do the next 6 months look like? What does the next year look like? And I think it would be helpful for us to have some open discussions and maybe even hear from folks in our community, as well as just a suggestion, maybe hearing from an economic person who can guide us in thinking about, we have our budget right now and we're going to be evaluating that on a monthly basis, but what are the impacts moving forward? What are the things we should be preparing for? How are we going to prepare ourselves to support our community again, in the next 3 months and in the coming year. And I'm wondering about maybe if the board would be interested and the COVID task force would be interested in doing a joint meeting between the select board and the COVID task force to discuss these things and to maybe have a panel presentation so that we can really start to lift our heads and think about the coming months. Any reactions to that thinking? Selectman Dolliver?
I would be more open to what we just did. Offer up another suggestion to the COVID group and say, could you folks look into this, then report back to us? I mean, I read a report yesterday where they're speculating, and it depends on who they are, that this mask thing might be the new norm, you know, for 2 to 3 years anyway. But right now, I put my eggs in their basket. I want, you know, I think it would be better for them to look at it, then report back, and then if you wanted to have a meeting and discuss it, I'd be okay with that. But I think would be stepping on their toes if we had a joint workshop to hash out some details or to discuss these things. I would rather let the group do it on their own and then come back to us. I see your point. I just think it would be better to have them do it.
Thank you, Mr. Dolliver. Selectman Daley?
Keith, I agree with you. I'm into looking forward and trying to do the right thing for the future, but we can't look too far into the future because there's too many unknowns. We have to be careful. We have to look maybe a month or two into the future, and that's it at this point, because there's things we don't know. This virus thing is unpredictable. But thank you for looking forward.
Thank you, Mr. Daley. Selectwoman Perry?
I just want to echo what what Select Board Member Dolliver said. I think that having the COVID task force meet on recommendation of what we have, I think right now is the best way to do it, because as John said, there are too many unknowns. And if we took all of, it's a lot of time to dedicate to that. And that's why we created the committee, was to be able to move that. But I do see where you're coming from. And so I will, whatever you guys think is best, I think is good.
Selectman Wynn, do you have any comments?
I reiterate John Daly, before he raised his hand, my comment would have been, we really don't have a crystal ball. And to be able to make and look into the future, it's going to be a tough one, because right now our own government doesn't really kind of have a handle on it. So I'm wondering how hard it would be, but I understand where you're coming from. I think we all would like to know, you know, what's it going to be like for us. But I also agree with Mr. Dolliver, Selectman Dolliver, in that, you know, this mask thing is probably going to be a new reality. And I believe that it's not going to be 6 months from now. It's going to be a year to 2 years from now. So that's my beliefs, and I'm speculating as well. So, but I do like the idea that what the task force is doing, in the fact that I, you know, task them with a question or something that we need to understand more, and then work in that direction. But I stick with the crystal ball thing. We don't know.
Okay, it sounds like the consensus is that we be, rather than what I was thinking about was something a bit more global, that we take it a little bit more specific and come to specific suggestions as to things that we'd like the task force to do. So I certainly will think through my thoughts a bit further, and probably at the next meeting come forward with any specific suggestions that I have. Are there any other specific suggestions that anyone's thinking about at this moment?
Mr. Chair, I would just like to say that I think Bob and the task force, I think they're kind of moving. They're actually working as a good machine, where they're really coming up with things that we would come up with and expressing them like he did tonight, which That's exactly what I was thinking when he was talking about those things. So I'm really relying on them and their viewpoints on what they see, because they see more than we do, or possibly see more than we do, and have more discussion than we might have. So I'm really kind of, relying on them as a group to hand us with that type of information. And then, as Bob said, he's holding off on some information so we can get more people at his meeting. And so maybe there's going to be more to come. So I look forward to what that group has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the select board?
Yeah. Good.
Pat, I know that you are going to provide us with a COVID update as far as town operations go, but want to just give you an opportunity if there's anything you'd like to add at this point in time.
I would just thank the task force. I think Bob did a great job of summarizing where they've been. I think we're very fortunate to have them. For on the town side, I mean, if you just want me to maybe skip ahead and do that report now so we can stick with that one topic, I would just say that we continue to get concerns about people not wearing masks, but I think it has changed, I would say, over the last couple of weeks, partly because we have had the community service officers out more visibly and being able to be stationed consistently in certain areas. Marshall Way is one of those areas. This past weekend, with so many people in town, we had people that were very, very concerned that we were having too many people in town. But all in all, I think the people who are here, I think did a great job in terms of wearing masks where appropriate, which is in congested areas, and distancing themselves as they should. And we had high tide, not at the optimal time of day, but people were still able to be on the beach. Now, we continue to receive concerns from some people, and we understand those totally. That I think the important thing for me anyway is that people care enough to be looking out for each other and making sure that we keep our distance and we are wearing masks. But, and again, the science is going to change depending on as time goes on. But certainly, and the task force has discussed this, we don't need 100% compliance with masks. We just need enough of compliance. And if we can get people in the 70% range, and I think as you look around the community, that is where we are most of the time, then Ogunquit is doing very well. And I think the other thing that I want to remind people about is when we look at the things that Maine put in place early on and has changed over time depending on the data. And Ogunquit has followed that very closely as well. And our neighboring communities has followed that closely as well. So when we get to the point where we are now, where we are at the height of summer, when we want people to be here, I think we have those safeguards in place that make us more of a safe community than some of the other places that people have seen on television, where they have opened up way too soon and then they've had to pull it back. Maine never opened way too soon. We have done gradual. Ogunquit has been following those directives all along. So I think that is why we are in such a good place. I think it's also important to know that we've got a comprehensive approach to staying healthy in Ogunquit. It's the citizens, it's our elected officials, and it's our business community. And everybody is trying to do the right thing. Everyone is pulling in the same direction. I think that makes a huge difference. Having our staff be able to do the things that need to be done, being out in the community visible, helping to remind people, I think has been very helpful. All of our employees have done a great job in terms of being as supportive as possible. When we just had an election, we were able to get through the election very well in terms of people keeping their distance, people working with us as we checked temperatures when they came in, when knowing that they might have to wait to vote in person, but that's a personal choice that people make. Some of you voted in person, so I'd be interested in your thoughts. But I mean, the waits were not excessive. And I think that again goes to the planning that our town clerk and the staff put into having a successful election day. I apologize, I didn't have internet connection, so I'm not sure if Chris Murphy already covered this, but we had just a record number of absentee ballots this year, which also helped make this election process go very well. I consider that part of our COVID report because that was the motivation for the absentee ballots. We've always been able to vote absentee, but being able to encourage people to vote absentee and people understood, I want to vote, I want my vote counted. The town put in this special oversized lockbox so people could deliver their ballot without having to touch a human or see a human, knowing that it was going to be counted. So I think those are all important parts of our COVID response. And we will continue to work at that. The other area we're obviously paying a great amount of attention to, which has become more of a hot spot for us as the summer has gotten hotter, is that we are having more people in town and there's more demand on our public restroom facilities. So we have got more staff than we have in other years. They've all been trained in terms of keeping everything clean and sanitized. We've got new staff members who are taking their responsibilities very seriously. So I think everybody has been listening to the discussions at the COVID-19 task force meetings. I think it's been very helpful and educational. And I think that the community has taken that to heart. Our staff has taken it to heart. And the end of the day, we just want everybody to be healthy, whether they live or visit in Ogunquit. So I just want to thank everybody. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate the overview and you working on your feet to move that up on our agenda. Are there any questions for Pat and or any further questions for Mr. Whitelaw? Okay. I'd like to offer an opportunity for anyone in attendance. If you would like to ask any questions regarding the COVID task force or the town manager regarding her COVID report.
Chloe, you should be able to talk.
Chloe, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Michael, I think. I'm listed as Chloe because I'm on our computer.
Hi, Michael. If you wouldn't
good.
mind just announcing your name, your full name and your...
This is Michael Lazarus. I live on Shore Road, just south of the Cove. My family are dual residents. Much of my family works up here, and we also live in Philadelphia. So some observations on COVID compliance. And first, I think that the interest of the select board and the work of the COVID committee is sincere, and I appreciate the hard work that everybody's put in. Couple comments. One is, I think a goal of 70% compliance with masks is a pretty low bar. And I'd also say that I don't think that we're meeting that in congested areas. I live south of the Cove. We walk to town every day. We cross the street every 100 yards to get away from people that are not wearing masks. On the ramps to the beach and on the beach, there's very little compliance, and there's even non-compliance by blue shirt and yellow shirt CSOs and police officers. There doesn't seem to be any enforcement effort that I can see. I don't see any CSOs talking to people about putting on masks. The marginal way, it may be better, but it's still fairly impossible situation. I had an incident on the ramp. I waited at the top of the ramp. Gentleman came up, started walking directly at me even though I was waiting. I asked him to maintain 6 feet, and he turned at me and coughed. It's pretty obnoxious and, extreme behavior. And the bathrooms. I've never been in the men's room, and my family has never been in the women's room when there was not people without masks. So my suggestion would be that we should take some of the CSOs and station them outside the bathrooms and station them at the entrances to the marginal way, and that we should have some enforcement mechanism because I don't think there's compliance at 70% in the middle of town at any given day. I do think that all the merchants that I've observed, every store, every hotel, motel, bed and breakfast owner that I know is taking this very seriously. I think it's a street problem. And I appreciate everybody's efforts, I really do. And then finally, because there was a lot of stuff in the last half hour of this meeting, in terms of the suggestion that you have a town hall meeting, as you give consideration to that, I think you give consideration to messaging. So much like we don't have a clear message on a national level, I think that while I understand the advantages of your group meeting in person, it's part of that messaging system when you're asking people to comply and then you have a meeting. It just can be confusing to some individuals, and I'll shut up now and mute.
Thank you, Michael, for your comments. Are there any other folks who have their hands raised at this point in time?
Yep, Karen, you should be able to talk.
I'll just chime in that my thought process is let's allow public comment, and then we can either as a select board and or Bob and or Pat, you can respond as a collective whole. Karen, if you could unmute yourself, we are prepared to hear your comments. Karen, we're not able to hear you if you're talking.
Is somebody else I can move on and then maybe come back?
That sounds good. Thanks, Tom.
Mike, you should be able to talk.
Hey, Heath and the select board. I'd like to reiterate what Mike has just said regarding the no masks. You know, walking down the streets, we see a ton of people. So I'd like to reiterate what Mike has said. You know, we wear our masks all the time downtown. When we can't be social distanced, we put our masks up. But we see a lot of people, whether they're day trippers or not, you know, on the boardwalk going from the beach to Shore Road through the walkway. And again, in the parking lots where you're not social distancing and people just don't wear a mask. So the compliance is horrible. You know, we went down to Main Beach the other day and we were on the ramp. We wear a mask going on and off the beach, but we have families of people that just are not going to wear a mask. So literally, I mean, you almost need a CSO person at the beginning of the beach and the beginning of Shore Road, literally telling people you need to wear masks or go home. I mean, I believe it was mandated by our governor that people wear masks in public where they cannot social distance. So if people don't want to follow the rules, then somehow we need to start governing this so we don't become the next hotspot. And we've done such a great job for the last 4 months, and now we have all these people visiting town. Let's not let them set us back to where we were in April, because it was not a very nice time.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Heath.
Tom, do we have anyone else who'd like to talk?
Trying Karen again.
Can you hear me this time?
Yes, we can, Karen.
Hi. I missed what the just immediate previous caller said, but I have to go back to 2 callers ago. I agree with him. I have been a part-time resident here since the mid-70s. Here 5, 6,
You're
7, 8
welcome.
a year. I've listened to every task force meeting. I wish that what you guys were saying were true. It's not true. It's not true. The locals are very good about wearing masks. All of us wear them. The people who come into this town are not wearing them. They're not taking it seriously. And as much as
All detailed.
Karen, I'm sorry. Tom, would you be able to mute Mike Arnold? Thank you. All right, go ahead, Karen.
as much as I really would like to say that the CSOs are doing a great job, they're not. I've now counted 8 different ones who are not wearing a mask. They're not wearing a mask when they're talking to people. I've been side by side with them, behind them, in front of them, everywhere. And I walk all over this town. And most of the people on this board can attest to that because you see me out every single day. I don't leave my place without a mask. I don't take it off till I get home. But it's really frustrating for me to live in this community, which is really trying to do the right thing, because I think all of the business owners are really trying to do the right thing. But we're allowing people to come into this town and not doing the right thing. And that's wrong. And that's frustrating. And we're either going to take a stand or we're not going to take a stand. And if we're going to take a stand, then take the stand and insist that everybody wears a mask. And when you see them not wearing a mask, you fine them. And that goes to the CSOs. They have to wear a mask every single minute that they're in a blue shirt. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments, Karen. Tom, do we have anyone else with their hand raised?
Nobody at this time.
Would anyone on the board and or Pat or Mr. Whitelaw, would anyone like to talk and or respond to some of the comments from the community? Mr. Daly?
I said in the past, I'll say it again. I think personal protective equipment is readily available now. It was not 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But if any one person needs a face shield, hand sanitizer, face covering, reach out to me. I have plenty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Mr. Whitelaw?
Okay, so I, in my comments, to start off my section, I said tomorrow we're taking up some of the issues that were brought up today, particularly around entryways to the beach and social distancing at high tides. We can talk about other things. So there will be some discussion around this tomorrow. So if you want to tune in and see how that goes, please do. I take all the inputs I get, and I get a lot of them every morning. Email is loaded up, and I think the task force, each member of the task force also gets those emails that come from all over. And some of them are extremely positive. There's some that are pointing out maybe inadequacies, but we also get a lot of positive ones. And so we're balancing risk and trying to do what is good for the community on all aspects. And safety is job number 1 for our task force.
Thank you, Bob. Pat, do you have any comments? Yeah.
Just one, because I do think that the task force is going to take up some of the issues that were mentioned. But if anyone sees a member of the town of Ogunquit staff not wearing a mask out in public, I would very much appreciate if they would let me know immediately. Everyone knows that we have to wear masks when we are doing our jobs. We wear them in this building. We wear them outdoors. So I would ask sincerely that you let me know as soon as possible so we can rectify that.
Thank you, Pat.
In saying this, I also recognize that there can be circumstances for each one of these incidents. So there's always more to a story. But if it's something that causes a citizen concern that our employees are not modeling what we are required to do, I want to know that right away. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Selectman Wynn? Selectman Wynn, if you want to unmute yourself.
Muted. A bit of a question about the personnel and if personnel is not within the social distancing range and they are together, that means they need to wear a mask. Is that correct? Okay, so that means every personnel. So in other words, if I hate to say this, but if you're sitting on a lifeguard stand and there's 3 of you sitting there together, should you have masks on? Okay, I just wanted to, I just curious. Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. Any other comments and or questions? So in listening to the comments and Pat, I think, and Mr. Wynn, I appreciate your follow-up question. I think it's one that's important to be answered. And so, Pat, I think you have some information to work with your team on and see about what we might do, including our lifeguards and with our CSOs, et cetera. The question around governing, enforcement, fining keeps coming up. And personally, I don't want to see us move to, I would rather us be focused more on education than penalizing people, because I worry about the overall implications of what that means. At the same time, I understand when people say, if education's not working, then what do we need to be doing? At the same time, when I look at our numbers, so far, the state of Maine is declining in numbers. So I think we're one of 2 states, is the latest that I've read. So I'm wondering if, and I'm not able to articulate it, but if there's anything that we as a board would like the task force to do around thinking through both continuing to monitor the data around the percentage of people wearing masks and is education working, and or are there other recommendations that we should be doing as a town moving forward? Mr. Daly?
I have no idea what else we can do, but if people are uncomfortable, they have to stay home. It's a personal decision. You need to decide what you're comfortable with. And it sucks, but people have to make their own personal decision to go out in public or not. Do you trust the people you don't know in public or not? Sorry, that's how I feel. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Mr. Wynn?
Just another question, maybe it's for the task force, is that I know we talked about this at the very beginning, and we mentioned that if it's town property, we can do certain things. If it's not town property, what can we do? Is there anything legal that if somebody's not wearing a mask, you can't arrest them? I mean, it's not like a law or anything. I mean, it's a recommendation. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm asking, and maybe that's something that the task force could look into so that we could really kind of put this thing a little bit to rest so that we have more understanding of what the town's ability is to do. What can we do about it? Or is there anything we can do at all? And I absolutely understand what John is saying in that, I mean, I'm come to the conclusion that for me, I mean, I've seen exactly what Karen and Mike and Mike, what they've said. I've seen that. And I just drive around. I'm not a scaredy cat. It's just for me to do the right thing for society. I try to not be part of it. I try to stay away from it. So I'm just wondering, you know, what legal bounds do we actually even have? I mean, to have the police force or anybody make those things. And I guess if we probably watched Lieutenant Buttrick's, we might have had some answers there. And I'm sorry that I did not, but I probably should. But anyways, thank you.
I see Mr. Whitelaw's hand up, but Mr. Dolliver, you had your hand up.
I'll let Bob speak first.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whitelaw, would you like to add some
Yeah,
thoughts?
let me just address to Mr. Nguyen. An executive order in the state does carry legal ramifications if violated. And that was on, that comes from Lieutenant Matt, and that was part of his conversation.
Right.
So he can make an arrest, he can fine, and he can do that based on the executive order, which becomes a Class E misdemeanor of some sort. Having said that, most of the public health people that are on our task force believe that individual enforcement doesn't really accomplish what we are trying to accomplish, and that is a safe environment. It does create a certain sense of, oh my God, this could happen to me, but there's just too many people. So you have to really educate in their view, and I agree with that. Perhaps the task force needs to do a better job of making those type of recommendations, and we'll look into that. But I would go back and look at what Lieutenant Matt said about the legal ramifications. And I think in terms of the police, if they had a situation where someone was belligerent, that would earn them some more conversations around enforcement and fining. I think most of the time they are trying to encourage people to follow the rules. And we will, as a task force, we will continue to discuss how education and what we can do to make people get to the compliance level that we'd like.
Thank you, Bob. All right.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Dolliver, would you like to add some comments?
Mine was just real quick. You know, I hear this 70% compliance, and then people say there isn't 70% compliance. You know, if you have a group of people down at the beach and there's 6 of them and they're together and they feel they're more than 6 feet away from other people, then the executive order says they don't have to wear a mask. Right. I'm not defending, I'm not, you know, so if that group doesn't have a mask, they don't have to, if they're maintaining social distancing. And you can't look at them and say, well, 70% aren't wearing masks. We all want everybody to wear masks all the time. We understand that. But if you are sincerely maintaining social distancing, you know, I think on the marginal way, it was discussed that, you know, the prior board made the determination that you must wear one on the marginal way. And if you don't, I think our CSOs and or police officers have a moral obligation and a job to do and to enforce it. And if they refuse, then a fine may be necessary. But everybody's interpretation of am I or my group or are they maintaining social distance, that's open for everybody's interpretation. It's like an opinion. So I think we should promote wearing of masks more and try to educate people versus the fining. But on town property, we can make the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Dolliver. Bob, it sounds like your committee is already talking about many of these things, particularly some points where whether it's the entrance to the main beach, etc. So looking forward to hearing what you all may recommend moving forward. I also think you heard some thoughts around continuing the conversation, I guess, around the enforcement side of things versus the education side. I'm interested in if, and I agree with my community health background, education is important. But if we're feeling that as more and more people are coming into Ogunquit, which has been over the last couple of weeks, that we're not hovering around, whether it's 70, 80%, whatever that might be, maybe we need to look at how we're educating. You know, the signs, are they working? Are there other, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about what are our other opportunities around education? Is there other campaigns that we could be thinking about? Is it time to think about a refresher of our signs, a different look, something that might call more attention to people? Even moving sign locations might help in some situations, etc. So those are just a few of my thoughts. Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Whitelaw. Appreciate your time and appreciate all that the task force is doing, and looking forward to hearing more. And again, thank you, Pat, for your update as far as from the town perspective. Moving us along to new business 6.0. We have a few things, and I'd like to talk about 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4 on our agenda because they're all very similar about sort of their documents, whether it's our code of ethics, whether it's our rules, communication, or written communication protocols, and thinking about our goals and priorities. We'd like to discuss tonight a process for reviewing these and thinking about any revisions, as well as ultimately coming to approving any new updates. And personally, for me, I would like to do this as quick as possible for us, not drag it out for months on end. But I'm wondering in general if folks have thought about any ways that we might be able to do this so that feedback can be honored and revisions can be made, and ultimately we can approve them in maybe by our next meeting or the meeting thereafter. Does anyone have any thoughts on the process for how we might begin to review and make changes and ultimately approve the documents of 6.1 through 6.4? Mr. Nguyen.
Mr. Chair, I normally we go through this in some sort of a workshop, I would imagine, and that I don't know how else we would be able to do that, so that the public would be able to kind of get an idea what's going on. So, but that's my 2 cents. We'd have to schedule some sort of a workshop, I would imagine.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Any other suggestions or thoughts? Mr. Daly.
I personally am tired of going through these documents. Sorry, I am. We go over them every year and it's redundant, but I'd be willing to take one of them myself and talk to people and see if they have any updates, just to make this go smoother. We should not be spending hours on this. We need to get things done, not reviewing documents year after year after year. Sorry, that's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Any other comments around process? Mr. Dolliver.
I'd kind of be on the same page as John right there. I mean, there's 4 of them right now. There's 5 of us. Somebody doesn't get one, and somebody, you know, we all get one. Put your thoughts down, give a rough draft. If you want it the same, it's the same. At the next meeting, we can discuss it. If you want to have a workshop, we can do it, but I don't see why you can't review make changes if need be or wanted, and just move on. This should not take, I mean, I could do it tonight, but I mean, I'll take select board rules. I'll take 6.2 if nobody else wants it. And I'll write down my thoughts, my suggestions. I'll email them to the chair. He can pass them out before the next meeting with the packet. And if 3 other people grab 6.1, 6.3, and 6.4, we do the same thing. We'd be prepared at the next meeting to change it, not change it, approve them, leave them the same, whatever you want as a group.
I'll take ethics.
Thank you for that suggestion, Mr. Dolliver. Ms. Perry, do you have any thoughts around our process for thinking about these documents and how we might review them and ultimately get to a consensus, hopefully, and approving them?
Maybe a hybrid approach. I don't really like everyone just being assigned one section, because I think that not that we couldn't speak on any other sections, but I think that it would, my thought of a hybrid approach is for everybody to go back home, take a look at the documents, and bring forward at the next meeting what they would like to see changed, and just do it that way and keep it simple. I don't think, I know that we do typically do workshops. Now my dog's about to bark. I know we typically do workshops, but I don't see a need for a workshop around this either.
Pat, I have a question, 2 thoughts. One is the thought around each of us looking at all the documents and emailing someone our comments. And is there somebody available to help us with that? Or the other is if we each took a lead on one of the documents, and so Rick said he would take the rules, and in the next week, each of us individually email Rick with our individual thoughts, and he comes back with a collective document for us to discuss. I guess my question is, I don't want to usurp the public process, and certainly we would still discuss it and review it in the public eye, but would that be allowed for us individually to email one member our specific comments on a particular document that person then compiles and brings back or sends to me for our next meeting?
Mr. Chair, I think it's allowed, but I think, and I don't use this a lot, but I know most organizations do, which is a shared document approach like Google Docs or something like that, where you can all look at it, you can make your changes, it is all public. If that's something that is a direction you want to go in, I feel very sure we could get that set up fairly easily for you. So that, I mean, that would, so I don't think you're violating anything, because everything you would be sending would still be a public document, but for your ease of getting your thoughts out and being prepared for the next meeting, that might be one way of going.
Thank you. Mr. Dolliver?
I'm fine with whatever the majority of the board feels, but I agree with Lindsay too. It's 4 documents. I will be more than ready if we don't do Google Docs or if we don't divvy it up. I am be more than ready to give my opinion on changes or no changes at the next meeting, and I would be ready to vote on it.
Okay, just saw 3 thumbs up or 2 additional thumbs up to that. How does that sound to you, Bob, that we just come to the next meeting with our specific comments and or recommendations for changes?
I will function and work towards the majority of the people what they decide to do. I just thought the comment that we do it in workshops, I didn't really have a position. So whatever works for all of us is the best way to go.
Bob, you still have a flip phone.
Yeah. I'll have to just put a sign up.
My last comment there is let's just make a commitment that at the next meeting, these four things are done. We don't leave the next meeting until they're signed off on and we've all agreed.
So what I'd like to propose is a bit of a hybrid as to what Pat suggested and ultimately what you're suggesting. And that's that we do create a shared drive for these documents, and that between now and our next meeting, or I can set a deadline, that we individually go in and add our comments so that that can be part of our next select board packet. And ultimately we can see any suggested changes in advance of our meeting so that we're as prepared as possible at our next meeting, whether it's a workshop initially to discuss and ultimately comes to a meeting, that we're able to see the comments, digest them, and come prepared to the meeting so that we can move through it as quickly as possible. How does that sound to people?
That sounds fine, except I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I know how to check my email. Zoom is very difficult for me, which is why I like in person. So unless somebody's got to baby feed me this Google whatever, either download it for me and show me how to do it, because I'm not super computer literate, and but I'm, as long as it doesn't slow down our process. Lindsay's right. It's 4 things. We can meet at the next meeting, hash out any changes or no changes and get it done. But if the majority, you know, if the majority of you feel we should do it on the computer beforehand, I'm fine with that too.
I think we can help you out with that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll work with Pat to see about setting things up as quick as possible and getting information out to you all about how to make any comments or suggested changes in some sort of shared document that can ultimately be compiled and in our next packet for us to discuss. Are there any things regarding 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, or 6.4 that folks in particular want to discuss this evening? Selectwoman Perry?
Can I just, can you just clarify for me? So you do want to do it the Google Doc version, but why, what is the problem with the alternative of just us looking at it on our own at home and then next meeting just bringing forward any things that we see that we want changed? Like what's the, it didn't seem like other people on the board wanted to do it that way. And so I'm just wondering what the value is, and I'm fine to go along with it. I'm just wanted some clarification because it sounds like I don't understand why.
Okay, my apology, when I put it forward, I thought people were putting their thumbs up, so maybe I missed the boat on that. I think from my lens, it's helpful if I can see everyone's comments and think through it before our next meeting so that I come to the next meeting fully prepared to say, yep, I'm in agreement, or I'm not, and I need us to discuss this. I think there's a lot of things that we'll probably all be in agreement on, and we certainly can move forward rather than spending 15 minutes trying to figure out if we're in agreement or not. That's my thought, but again, I'm fine with if the majority of the board just prefers to come to our next meeting with our individual thoughts and we don't have a compiled document of those thoughts in advance, that's fine as well.
I would like to come to the next meeting with my own thoughts and talk them out there, but I will use a Google Doc if needed. I do know how to use Google Docs. I could come over and show Rick how to use his.
All right, thank you, Ms. Perry. Mr. Dolliver, do you have a preference?
Whatever 2 other people say. I don't care. I'll
Mr.
be prepared
Wynn.
at the next meeting either way.
I support whatever Bob wants.
Mr. Wynn, do you have a preference?
Oh boy, that's a good one, John. I got the best computer person in the world I live with, so I'm good to go either way. She'll help me.
So
Okay,
I
so that didn't help us.
No
nope,
consent.
not,
I'm good. Either way, doesn't matter.
I'll vote for Google Docs.
Fine. Yep, Google Docs. Great.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, I'm
all
good.
right. Sounds like
Next.
we're now in agreement. Thank you all.
Google Docs.
You just want to clarify if there is anything that any of you wanted to comment on as far as 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, or 6.4 for things that you wanted to say tonight. I want to give everyone an opportunity if there is anything of an urgent matter. Okay, hearing none, I would like to offer one suggestion, and that's under 6.4. I believe we should move to schedule an executive session, which we can do at the end of this meeting, so that we can discuss some personal matters. The prior board was in the process of doing that prior to COVID hitting and had put things off, but I would like to move forward. So we have some upcoming things, including our town manager contract, which I believe should be discussed. And so if there can be consensus that we could move to schedule an executive session so we could begin that work or pick up that work and move forward. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Yep.
All right. Thank you all. Are there any public comments regarding 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, or 6.4?
Currently, no hands raised.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, let's move on to 6.5, which is our town committee and board appointments. In our select board packet, the town manager and town staff have provided us with an overview of each committee, the terms where that people are currently on and are serving, and anyone whose term has expired, as well as a spreadsheet concerning all the appointments that we need to do. I believe it's our goal to try to do this as quickly as possible. And so again, want to open it up for discussion. Traditionally, we've asked people to apply and given a deadline. And then thereafter, the board begins interviewing and putting on our agenda to appoint people as quickly as possible thereafter. Is that a process that we'd like to continue following, and or are there any suggestions to make changes or improve the process moving forward? Mr. Dolliver.
Well, I sent an email. A couple of people contacted me and said they were told that they had to wait till the end of the month to fill out an application. And I sent an email. I didn't get a response. I'm not sure why somebody would have to wait till the end of the month. I would be, and I said in the email, I'm ready ASAP to appoint if we have openings. I would like to go back to the original where, especially with the new board, I'd like to have the board meet with the committee members or the committees as a group, go over their mission statements and, you know, not long, 15, 20 minutes would be nice just to see where they're at, who they're at, and if they have any questions, and go over with the new board, you know, maybe a list of select board liaisons if the committees need it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dolliver, and I appreciate your comments around that. How do we think about communication between us and our committees? If we can hold on to that thought and right now just stick to the appointment process. Are there any other thoughts regarding our process and suggested changes and or improvements? Selectwoman Perry?
You can stop me if this is the wrong place to bring this up, but I know that some of the committees have really not had not a chance to meet as a committee. And I'm wondering, will we be able to talk about how that impacts them, where some people that join really haven't had an opportunity to even be a part of the committee and their term is already expiring? Is there a possibility to make some exceptions when that case comes up? I mean, I can be more specific, but I don't want to be out of line. I want to make sure I'm having that conversation with you in the right place.
They'd just be reappointed if, you know, if,
I was,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Mr. Chair. But to answer that question, I would assume if somebody's term is up, they would come in front of the board for a reappointment. And that's,
So still push them through the whole the process, even if,
I think we'd be required to. Even if it's a rubber stamp, you know, I think you'd still be required to have a formal vote to either reappoint or appoint somebody.
I was just going to say, and I think in those lines, my preference would be to keep the terms that the prior board agreed to and appointed people for. And certainly, I understand there's a couple of situations where some committees got started, in one in particular, and they might have had one meeting. And my thought is if those people, particularly who were appointed only for a one-year term because of the committee just getting started, for the public to understand, when we start a committee, we initially appoint a few people to 3-year terms, a few people to 2-year terms, and a few people to 1-year terms so that we can start them on a rotation. So an example would be our sustainability committee just got started, and they just had a couple people who were appointed again to 3-year, 2-year, and 1-year terms. And so the 1-year terms technically ended, I think, effective with our July 14th election and town meeting. And so my thought process is if those people want to be reappointed, they could now apply and it would be for a 3-year term. Any other comments regarding that particular item and or our process? Mr. Daly.
Yes. One thing we never had the conversation about, and Bob, please let me know if I'm wrong. If someone on the board that was appointed that's not in line with the select board's mission, we never talk about getting rid of them. And I think we should have that conversation now and then. It's a tough conversation to get rid of someone who was reappointed, but every once in a while, someone is not going the way the board wants them to go. And I don't think we've ever got rid of someone on the board because they weren't. But I think we should have that discussion. Not tonight, but we should have that discussion. Bob, I'm curious what you think.
What's that?
I'm curious what you think.
I'm curious about what I think?
Yeah, because you've been on the board
You're
a long
always
time.
curious what I think. No, I actually agree with Heath. And in fact, that's what I would have said, is that the fact that if there are people that were on that board because of the situation that we have been in, and they don't have they haven't had the opportunity to experience and work on that board, that I don't know why we would not reappoint them anyway. I mean, there's four of us here that appointed those people. Why wouldn't we reappoint them to be on that committee if they wanted to be on that committee?
Because we learned more about them and we saw their style and their mission and their agenda, and we don't agree with it, and it's not the way the board wants to go. Thank you.
So I'd like to take this opportunity, Mr. Daly, you brought up an issue of if somebody has volunteered for a committee and in essence, there's a performance issue of some kind that any one of us have a concern about. Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that falls under the state law around executive sessions, and that if that is the case, if we have a concern, then you all can email Pat and I and request a particular discussion to happen in executive session. And that may need to include that person because of the way the law is written. But Pat, do you have anything to add around if there is a particular issue with somebody serving on a committee?
What you've just said, Mr. Chair, is correct. I think it also gets to the point of how you do your appointments. You have been interviewing people who are being appointed to a committee for the first time. You haven't traditionally interviewed people again after they've been on a committee for a while. So that is something you might want to consider too. But if the base question is, if you do have concerns about a committee member's performance, I think it's always good to have that discussion with the committee member. They probably are not aware that you have those concerns. And then they can make a decision whether or not they want to continue or whether or not you want them to continue.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Dolliver.
I would defer this to legal. I don't think a committee member is an employee. So I'm not sure. And I don't want to bring up sore subjects, but it was, I mean, the last board, in my recollection of Ogunquit, the last board of the last two boards were the only boards to not reappoint committee members. It never happened in the history of Ogunquit before. So I don't know if there were any executive sessions talking to committee members, or it was done in public. So I'm a little confused saying if somebody has an issue with a committee member, you need an executive session to discuss that issue. I believe executive session falls under employees, not committee members. And past precedent with the town of Ogunquit in the last 2 or 3 years, I'll say, it was done in public where they just weren't reappointed. So I don't know where we're going with this. I'm not sure why we're talking executive session, and I don't know the answer. So I would defer to the town manager to ask legal, but my recollection of executive session regulations or accepted reasons, I'm not sure somebody saying I don't want to reappoint a committee member, a volunteer committee member, is a reason to go into executive session.
I think potentially we're talking about two different things. So one is if somebody's term is up, and I believe it's before this board, whether or not that person gets reappointed or not. And
Yep.
that happens in the public setting. I think and maybe I'm misinterpreting what Mr. Daly was saying, but I think the concern comes up if there is somebody who in the middle of their period of term, their term is not up, and there is a concern that should be discussed with that person.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're talking about a removal of a committee member.
I'm not even sure it would be discussing a removal. I think it would be to have a conversation with that person if there's a concern.
And again, and I apologize for misinterpreting, but even if that was the case, I'm not completely sure executive session is the spot for that. I thought it was employment, and they're not an employee. So I defer to Pat and I defer to legal. I don't know.
So Pat, I think there was a situation, and correct me if I'm wrong, where a legal opinion was sought on this about a year ago. Maybe I'm wrong on that. And if
I wasn't there.
Could we ask our town council to weigh in on what the appropriate process would be?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. All right. So the other thing I guess I want to say just in general about that is, I think, and this goes back to what Mr. Dolliver was saying earlier, and I asked to hang on to that comment about us meeting with our committees. I think if there are concerns, in the past, I think there's an opportunity to sort of say, hey, this is a new beginning. This is a new opportunity. Let's meet to discuss what the work is moving forward and get really clear. And, we can spend a lot of time talking about the past. And if there is something that we need to talk about and address, then I'm not suggesting that we don't talk about that and address that. But I also feel like if there is an opportunity for us to sort of reset and say, moving forward, starting today, there's a new board here, and here's our thoughts around the committee's work moving forward, and we'd like to have that discussion. So Mr. Nguyen, go ahead.
So to answer John, I'm just realizing, actually, John, when John had mentioned what he thought of this situation, and he said, well, I want to hear what Bob has to say. I didn't quite understand what he was asking. So I kind of think I have a better picture of what he was asking. And no, I don't have an issue with looking into situations where if it's something that the board does not want, that we have to make some sort of a decision on whether we think that's the right position that person should be in or not, and if it's going in the right direction of the board, of their committee, or if there are other committee members and they're not really working well together. If those people don't work well together, and it is made, an opinion or spoken to a board member or board members or whatever that might be, that I think we should take a look at it. So I don't know if that answered John or not, but that's how I look at it. But I'm also on the other hand, I think that person possibly, if we talk to that person, we have discussion with that person or persons, and they have the ability to say, you know what, maybe maybe this didn't work, but I really like to give it another try. Do people deserve second chances, or we just nail them? No, I believe people deserve a second chance. Maybe they want to stay and they didn't realize how they affected the other people on that board. So, I think the discussion with the board itself, like John said, I don't have a problem with that. So I hope I answered your question, John. I didn't quite get it at first. Kind of blindsided me a little bit there.
Sorry, Bob, that was not my intent.
No, I know. That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. So I'd like to offer up.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Sure, Mr. Dolliver.
Not to interrupt you. I just want to grasp my hands around this. If somebody could look into it, I guess, Pat, I can't imagine a select board went into executive session ever discussing the performance of a committee member and whether or not to reappoint them. And if that happened, I'd like the legal basis behind it. And if it didn't happen, then I don't want to talk about it. But if any select board, this one or another one or anybody, went into executive session to discuss either getting rid of a committee member or not reappointing a committee member because they didn't like how they combed their hair, or they were for or against whatever, I'm not sure that's the direction a select board should be taking legally. And I would like that answer. First of all, I'd like to know if it happened. Actually, I don't care if it happened. I want to know if that's something that should or shouldn't be talked about or discussed in executive session. I just don't believe it should.
Okay, so I'm going to bring us back to this particular agenda item. As far as oversight of committees and committee members, I would like to hang on to that conversation. It's Pat, sounds like you have some questions to ask our town attorney and get back to us, and we can put that on a future agenda and or a workshop to discuss our process, if we want a process and what that would look like. So bringing us back to our number of vacancies and appointments, I'd like to propose that we quickly turn things around, and that includes posting on our website any vacancies and asking for a first round of applicants to submit their applications. Sorry, I'm looking at my calendar. No later than Thursday, July 30th, which is just a little over a week away. I know that's a tight timeline, But if we want to appoint people at our first meeting in August, we've got to have their applications in and then put them on the agenda. Some people will need to be scheduled interviews with, and then ultimately have their appointments on the agenda. How does that process sound and that timeline to folks?
Fabulous.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen, does that sound good to you
Yeah.
as a first round?
Yeah.
It is not to say that people can't apply after that deadline, but if they want to be considered as the first round, then they should apply in essence within the next week and 2 days. And Pat, will it be feasible to get the vacant positions posted and here's what's available so that people can have a better understanding of what is actually available to apply for?
Yes, it'll be very easy to do that.
Okay, thanks. I'm also seeing a note here that Chris Murphy generally sends existing members of our committees and some sort of communication saying your term is coming up, and she asks if they want to reapply or not. And she's saying that she's prepared to do that this week as well. So sounds like all of that would coordinate. Okay. Going back to what Mr. Dolliver brought up and what's on our agenda, are there any thoughts around communications with our boards and, with our committees and how to improve communication? I know I talked with Pat last week and she talked about how a couple of years ago, committees were invited every couple of months to sort of do a presentation before the board. And she mentioned that's something that maybe we want to restart again. Mr. Dolliver just brought up at least having some initial meetings to talk about the scope of work and the mission, visions, etc. of the committees. Are there any other thoughts regarding how we communicate at least immediately as well as into the future with our committees? Mr. Dolliver?
And I just want to reiterate what how this started. I've seen some things being said at some committee meetings that I personally don't agree with. And I'm not sure it fits with what I think I can't say the vision, but the purview of some of these committees are. And again, that's my personal opinion, but I would like to at least meet with them, have those discussions in public, and then let the majority of the board decide. You know, it's I could be way off base, and if I am, I'm off base. But I think they could all be tightened up a little.
Thank you, Mr. Dolliver. Mr. Daly?
I agree. The committees, we love their opinion. We appoint them for a reason. We love them, the fact they may disagree with us, but they still have to head in the direction that the board wants them to head into. And so I think we have to meet with them, I don't know, quarterly? No more than quarterly. Make sure that they're on the same, they go in the direction that we support. Because there's nothing worse than a committee doing 9 months of work, a year work, and then the board of selectmen shut them down. That's like the wrong way to go. So we need to meet them so we're at least heading in a similar direction, in my opinion.
Mr. Nguyen or Ms. Perry, any comments regarding a process or thoughts around how we regularly communicate with our committees? Okay, what I'd like to propose is at least us putting together a schedule to have some initial meetings between our committees and this board to discuss the things that Mr. Dolliver and Mr. Daly were talking about. And then after that round, we can come up with a plan of how often and how we would regularly communicate back and forth with our committees. Does that sound okay with everyone? Okay, I'm seeing head nods. Is there any public comment on 6.5 town committee and board appointments?
I have a couple hands. Jerry, you should be good to talk.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Jerry.
Hey, my name's Jerry DeHart, and I am very excited for being selected to serve on the Budget Committee. I would hope that we would be able to fill these positions quickly and be able to meet quickly so we can address the budget issues that are coming before this town and the state and our local community. I do not see it as rosy as possibly put prior. We have hotels less than 25% full, and obviously their money goes to the state and is reallocated. I think it's important that the Budget Committee meet soon, be involved, and carry out what the voters asked for. I appreciate everyone's support, and I hope to work with the board closely and the town manager. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate your thoughts.
And Tom, you should be able to talk.
Hi, Tom.
Okay, hi everyone. Tom Sellers from Bourne Lane. I think that there's a little bit of confusion here between reappointing folks on committees and removal of people who have already been appointed to committees in the conversation. Reappointment is very different than removal. You have the opportunity to reappoint somebody, but if someone has already been appointed for a specific term, then they should be serving throughout that term unless there was an effort to remove them from that position. So I would hope that that would be considered by the town council when they take a look at the process that you're talking about. But I felt like we were conflating reappointment and removal from a position. And I don't think we should be removing people from committees who've been appointed for specific terms. And I agree with Jerry that we ought to be meeting as a budget review committee very soon as a member of that committee. And we'll be in contact with the town manager in order to try to facilitate that meeting as soon as possible.
Thank you, Tom, and I appreciate your comments and I agree. I think we were mixing the two, and so there's two sort of very different things. There's either appointing or reappointing people, and then the town manager is going to work with town council on getting us guidance as to people who are in appointed positions, if there's an issue with performance in those positions, how we would handle that. And if I'm hearing things correctly, I'm not necessarily hearing people are saying, let's get rid of people, more about how do you have a conversation with people about, here's the scope of work that this board is asking the committee to do. And we want to have that conversation, whether it be with that person or with the whole group of people. Any other comments from the public?
No other hands right now.
Okay, so I just want to take this opportunity to say we have openings pretty much on every committee. We have a new age-friendly community committee. I believe there's 7 people to be appointed to that committee. Our bike pedestrian committee has openings, both for regular folks as well as, I believe, for alternates. Our Board of Assessment Review has some openings. In our packet, I believe these people are highlighted in red. We have openings for our Budget Review Committee. We have openings for Conservation Commission, Harbor Committee, Heritage Museum Committee, Historic Preservation Committee, Marginal Way Committee, Parks and Recs, Performing Arts, Planning Board, Shellfish Conservation, Sustainability, and our Zoning Board of Appeals. So what we have decided is we are asking people whether or not you want to be reappointed, and or if you're just interested and you haven't been on a committee before and you want to be appointed, to submit the application by Thursday, July sorry, I want to make sure I get this date right. July 29th as the first round. Thereafter, your folks are more than welcome to continue submitting your applications, but we'll consider the first round of applications who come in. I know some have already come in. The other thing I want to share is there is an application online already. It is under the committee tab, and you can download it and fill it out. And or if you would like, I believe our town clerk would be more than willing to get you a hard copy and or email you a copy as well.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Dolver.
Thursday's the 30th.
Okay, my apology.
Okay.
That is correct. So our first initial deadline for applying for committees is Thursday, July 30th. Are we good to move on? Okay, 6.6. We generally have meetings the first and third Tuesday of each month. And I guess the question is, does that schedule work for folks moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. And do we have any other immediate needs besides the one I raised a little bit earlier that we would need to schedule an executive session for at this time? Okay. Anything else that we should discuss regarding agenda item 6.6? One question I have is just the format of our meeting and if it works and if there are any suggested changes or thoughts regarding, we see here we have our welcome and call to order. We review minutes. Our monthly financial report is at the beginning of the meetings now. Our liquor amusement license. Then we have any presentations, new business, old business, town manager report, and citizen comments. Mr. Daly.
We need to be more consistent with the 3-minute rule. Sometimes we're not, sometimes we are. And we have to be more consistent to be fair. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dolliver.
Mine was maybe, and I don't want to drag the meetings out, but maybe have a citizen, two citizens comment, one at the beginning and one at the end. So if somebody has something to say, they don't have to sit through the whole meeting. You know, I know a lot of people want to watch it, but a lot of people don't. So if you had an early citizens comment, they could say what they have to say and they can, be on their way. Just a thought.
Thank you, Mr. Dolliver. Ms. Perry.
To bounce off what John just said, as far as the 3-minute rule there, I feel like at one point in time there was some confusion and I believe it was clarified, but the 3-minute rule doesn't apply to responding to individual sections throughout comments. Is my question making sense? You know, so where we open it up, raise your hand. And I feel like in the past we've said, oh, well, the 3-minute rule doesn't apply to this area. Is that a fact?
I believe that prior to November, that was a fact where the 3-minute rule only applied to citizen comment period. But then in November, when I was elected and we revisited the rules, I believe we agreed to apply the 3-minute rule across the board, no matter when people were commenting.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. And then, so I would like to, like John said, definitely make sure that it's consistent. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Dolliver about having 2 sets of public comment. People don't have to sit through the whole thing. They can just simply maybe show up at the end and make their comment. But I do understand why, or maybe we can have a suggestion box or something that helps with that. But I think that if we added a second portion of citizens' comments, I mean, these are really long meetings already, and I can only imagine how much longer they would become if we did that. Thanks, John. But that's just my opinion, and I'm all for what everybody else wants.
Thank you, Selectwoman Perry. Mr. Nguyen.
Yeah, well, this meeting, I noticed that we opened it up pretty much to anybody that had a comment on every section that we went through. I don't mind that. I thought, but I don't think we've ever really done that before, but I don't mind doing that. But I also don't mind if the very beginning, if people have a comment, just any comment that they want to do at the beginning of the meeting, so that we can get back down to doing our business. I'd much rather like that than at the end of the meeting, when we always say, well, you have to, any comments about what this agenda is. So I don't know, one half dozen the other, but the way this meeting went, people had the option to comment on everything as we went along. So, other than the fact that something that doesn't pertain to the agenda at the beginning, so they don't have to hang out, and we can get it, you just boom, boom, get it done, and then get on to our business, so we can get our business done.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
Yep.
Mr. Dolliver, I think I saw your hand raised.
Just real quick, I mean, we're in Zoom meetings right now. I'm looking ahead to, hopefully someday in the next 14 years, being at the Dunaway Center again. So we have an older community, to have people, it's just offering more. And I can't imagine if you offer citizens' comments, at the 6:20 timeframe or whatever it is, that it's going to drag this meeting out that much longer. It's just a thought, but by the next meeting, we're going to discuss ethics rules 3 and 4. So, maybe we'll throw that in at the same time. It was just a brief thought to say, sometimes it stinks to wait 3 hours to have 3 minutes when it had nothing to do with what was on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Dolliver. Selectwoman Perry.
So Bob and Rick, are you suggesting, in just thinking out loud, to do citizen comment in the beginning and allow people to speak after each section and then have citizen comment again at the end? Is that what I'm understanding that you?
No, what I was saying is that I just noticed that this meeting, we allowed comment through the whole thing, as we moved along, whereas I don't think we've really done that in the past, which it was okay, but I don't really think that we need to have 2 comment sections in a regular meeting, one at the beginning, one at the end. I mean, one I think is enough, a regular comment section, but I didn't mind this.
But you think it should be in the beginning?
Either or, I could go with either, but I'd like it at the beginning, yeah, so that people wouldn't have to sit around. I mean, that's just kind of a thought to remedy that problem. But yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking. But having these Zoom meetings, we've had more comment than we ever had before. More and more people chat, comment than we've had at regular meetings. We've seen more on Zoom, from what I can see. So I didn't mind are there any comments on this section? I didn't mind that. I thought it was a bit different, and I don't know, I liked it the way it was. I don't know if that was what the chair meant to do, but I thought it was okay. Rather than waiting and then discussing it later in the meeting, it's like, okay, we already went over that, but geez, it's nice that they did it right then and there. Now we have a better picture of what people are thinking than we would if we waited 2 or 3 hours, which, after 2 or 3 hours, I've kind of forgotten I'm trying to focus on what we're moving to next. I don't know if that made any sense, but.
I think we've tried it. I think we've tried it a few different ways.
Yeah.
One was to take a group of topics and then ask for public comment and then come back and vote on those items. And then I believe the prior chairperson was doing some of this where public comment was happening on each agenda item. So I personally had liked that. So that's why I thought it would be best to continue, but certainly open to any suggestions. Okay, any other comments concerning our select board meetings, the format, the agenda?
Just to step back a little bit, I just like the idea of streamlining. You know, streamlining our agendas, focusing more on stuff that's really, you know, the serious things that we really need to take care of, and actually getting them done, accomplishing a task. You know, I've been able to sit through a couple of select board meetings in different towns, and you know, a lot of them will pick, you know, this type of this is serious. This is something we really need to take care of. Talk about it, discuss it, get it done. Boom, move on to the next one. So by putting so much on the agenda, it just doesn't seem streamlined enough to me. And it's not that I don't mind sitting here. It's just I'd like to be able to think that we could accomplish a lot in a shorter amount of time. It seems like there's a group of people that's willing to do that. I don't know. Just seems like it to me.
I'll just follow up to that, Mr. Nguyen, and I think there are a variety of options, and it might be some trial and error here at the very beginning for us, that we try a few things, see if it works, and continue if we like how it works, and then you know, either adjust and or go back to the old way of doing things if it doesn't work. But I think the thought of any ways that we can either streamline our meetings and or focus on the most important items and the more prefatory items. You know, I've been part of boards that they do a consent agenda where the things that, you know, aren't really necessary to deliberate are just part of a, you know, at the very beginning of the meeting. And if you want to pull anything out from that consent agenda, then you can do that. But it allows for the meeting focus to be really on those more important things moving forward. So I'm certainly open and willing to try a few different things to see how we can make the best use of all of our time and the public's time. Well, thank you. I appreciate your comments on the agenda, and I'll work with Pat. Like I said, we might try a few things in this next month or two and see how they work, and we can reevaluate as we move forward to say, yeah, we really liked the way this worked, or can we revisit this and look at it a different way? Any other comments regarding 6.6 on our agenda? All right, now we're at 6.7. And that's to talk about our 40th anniversary. So a lot of our planned events have been postponed, and the thought process is to think forward to celebrating our 40th in our 41st year moving forward, hopefully next year. I think we're all hoping that by then things, either a vaccine comes out or we're in a much better and different situation. At the same time, I had been thinking, it feels, this was supposed to be a big year for us, and it feels like it's sort of falling flat a little bit. And I was interested in discussing with this board, and ultimately probably with our Parks and Recs committee and or any of our other committees, around what are some ways that we could think a little bit differently about how we celebrate the 40th. And right now, a lot of creative things are happening in different ways. I had thought about, you know, do we do a contest to design an Ogunquit flag that might bring in people from our community? That's one suggestion. Just want to throw it out for any other suggestions. And if this board is interested in asking our Parks and Recs committee and or any other committee to sort of think through, okay, while we can't have any live events this year, can we think through some creative ways to celebrate our 40th remotely or in other unique ways? Mr. Nguyen.
This is a guy that's going to talk about technology that absolutely hates it, but I've seen a lot of things. I'm kind of, sometimes I watch StupidTube. I call it StupidTube, but YouTube. And I've seen a lot of young people making presentations, maybe to their teachers or maybe to, depending on whatever it may be. What I thought of is, what about a virtual parade, virtual people parade? You know, if you can go around town, with a mask and say, oh, what about the lifeguards? It's our 40th anniversary. What do you think? They got the masks on, whatever they're doing, they jump up, yay, the 40th for Ogunquit. Or businesses or individuals, and you have a virtual parade. So like what's happening out there in other communities, we can't road race. So all these runners train, but they're having virtual races all over. There's a starting line, there's a finish line. You go there whenever you can, and you photograph yourself, you run it, you send in your time. So that's what hit me, is this virtual parade. If you want the fire trucks, I mean, they literally can go out for a drive and somebody videotape it. You know, the police, whatever that might be, and put it on our website. And as a celebration, whoever's savvy with a computer, don't look at me, but, you know, community members, business owners, whoever wants to be part of it, somebody just going around and virtually videotaping something they'd like to say, and then putting it in a menagerie virtual parade. Just an idea. I've seen a lot of them. That's what people are doing. You know, get a band. You can get a band that you want to play whatever they're playing. I don't know. Suggestion. Easy, probably super inexpensive, not going to cost a thing, but maybe send a message out there to everyone that can get online and everybody can see it, from the elderly to anybody. People that come here, people, the vacationers, they can, boop, there it is. Look at Ogunquit celebrating. I don't know. Heath, you and I can do a dance down Main Street. How's that?
Sounds great.
Whatever.
I love the suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Chairman Willett, I recommend we do it right and we wait till next year. Next
Okay.
year we can do it right. We can have a huge celebrations which we deserve. Let's wait 1 year. I know it's a year off, but I want to do it right. I want to have a huge celebration. And we can't do that with the COVID, but next year we probably can. So I recommend we just wait till next year and celebrate hugely with the block parties and all the stuff we talked about that Pat presented and the chamber presented. Let's wait a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
I don't disagree with John, but I think people need a pep up. I think people need to smile. People need to see something happy going on. And if it's not the 40th, well, why can't we just put something together anyway about Ogunquit?
You can
And
do
share it with
both.
the community. Why not?
Mr. Dolliver?
Sorry, you can do both.
There you go.
You know, Bobby's idea is great. I mean, I don't call it a parade. I just call it like as a dig, we could find a videographer to piece it together, hopefully better than what I saw before, but that was the dig.
I'm gonna have John do it.
But I'm sure we could find somebody, and to make the contest is, you know, they could send in their video clips, whomever it is, and then it could be pieced together nicely as a tribute for this year, and then put wherever you put it for people to watch. And then to John's point, hopefully next year, and that's hopefully, things will be different. But I think you could do both. I mean, Bobby's idea right now is where we're at. I mean, everything else is a mute issue. We're not doing the block parties. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. So just to elaborate on Bobby's idea is, I think if you got somebody that was very good at editing and very good at piecing it together, and we encouraged people to send in 15-second clips of wishing Ogunquit a 40th anniversary or 40th birthday, however you want to point it out, call it. And then those were all put together in a 4-minute video.
Thank you, Mr. Dolliver. Selectwoman Perry, would you like to add anything to the conversation?
I think the video montage thing sounds like a good idea. I like the flag designing. We could also have like a 40th anniversary calendar that would commemorate this year, would have people send in entries and have each of the pages be a photograph from an Ogunquit photographer or citizen. YouTube in 2010 did a film called Life in a Day, where everybody, and they're actually getting ready to do another one on July 25th. If anybody's interested in looking it up, you could send in a video and represent Ogunquit. But what they did was they had people from all over the world send in a short video, whether it was, I think it had to be between 30 seconds and 2 minutes or something like that. And what they did was they pieced the whole thing together to start at midnight, and they went all the way to midnight, and they got people's videos from that specific time, and they made a feature length film out of it. It's something that we could consider putting out as a contest for this year, and doing a special release of Ogunquit in a Day next year to commemorate what our 40th year was like here. So yeah, it'd be like sort of like your montage parade, but it would be something that we could start gathering in the year that we're actually trying to commemorate, and make it a part of the big bash next year. So maybe something like that. But I do really like the thought of like having a calendar that, people take pictures from this year and they get released for next year. Because it has to be something of the two. If we're putting something together right now, how quickly can we roll those things out without making it feel rushed? But if we can make it something that happened during the 40th anniversary and do a big release during our real opportunities next year, that might make the most sense. So, but it should obviously be turned over to the public, and we should be asking for suggestions from them and having them send things in.
Wonderful. So let's do that right now. Are there any public comments or folks in the audience who would like to add anything and or suggestions to this conversation about how we might uniquely celebrate Ogunquit's 40th this year? Tom, do we have anyone who's interested in talking? Oh, yay, Jason's on.
All right, I'm actually doing it from my phone, so I don't know if it's going to work good, but can you hear me now?
We hear you.
Perfect. So just to kind of wrap things up on what we had planned on doing, so that some of you guys are new members, but the original plan was, because if we look back about a year ago, we were planning on doing the 40th anniversary before COVID. So we started doing some legwork with Parks and Recreation in combination with the Chamber of Commerce, and working together as a community and kind of helping each other out, coming up with some creative ideas. There was a lot of plans that were in the works. The combination of having Bon Air and the Chamber together, and the town of Ogunquit Parks and Recs, and taking the event from the park, from Dorothea Grant Common, and bringing it into the streets. So we had, members from Parks and Recs and the Chamber working together and coming up with some suggestions, some ideas, and it was great. It was working out really well. We had actually engaged or worked with the fire department. The fire department was planning on doing a chicken barbecue / lobster bake, and that the monies that they were going to raise was going to help to pay for a new defibrillator for the town. We had the Rotary Club involved. We had a variety of other things that we were planning on doing. It was going to be shutting down Shore Road from where Front Porch is all the way to Jacob's Lot. Jacob's Lot was going to be shut down as well. We had gotten permits from the state. So that was all in the works. So that being said, we're open to ideas and suggestions and trying to bring this, this event back. We also had a 4th of July spectacular that was going to take place at the beach. We were going to have a concert take place there. It was going to be a band from Las Vegas that was recommended by several business owners. Jackie Bevins was one of the persons that actually recommended. We worked with, just not throwing out names, but needless to say, working together as a community, bringing this band called Real Diamond. They were contracted to perform on Ogunquit Beach for the 4th of July, and it was going to be an American tribute with the fireworks to take place after. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it didn't happen. So all these things are sort of kind of in line. We reached out to the restaurants, and the restaurants were extremely excited. You know, from Crooked Pine to Betsy's to Front Porch, you know, just putting everything together and working together and communicating with everybody. These are the things that we were planning on doing. And over at the park, I had probably about 7 contracts put together with bands during Bon Air. We had Mary Breen from Bread and Roses donating a cake for the town of Ogunquit that was supposed to be celebrated. There was also, in addition to that, we're going to have all kinds of kids activities at the Dorothea Common, working with the Rotary there and trying to get the Heritage Museum to open up their doors so that people could go in there and see the history of Ogunquit. So that's what we had planned going on for this coming summer. Unfortunately, because of COVID, everything's been postponed.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about what had been planned, because certainly there was a boatload of work that had gone on to get to that point. And I think you're hearing from this board, certainly we're hoping that we can pick up next year and pick up many of these suggestions, if not all of those things that your committee and the chamber have been working on. Tom, do we have anyone else who'd like to comment?
Yep, Mark, you should be able to talk.
Mark Claremont, it looks like you might be on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
As he
Yes, we
should
can.
be.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mark.
Okay, cool. Just a quick thought while you guys were talking about the video portion. I agree with John and also with some other people on the board. I think that it would be much better if we held off the big celebrations for next year. But one thought, because it is reaching a milestone, is there's a website called ogunquitbarometer.com that actually had a historic video about Ogunquit at the time in the late 70s before we incorporated as a town. And it's almost like a time capsule. And it's interesting when you watch it because they're actually dealing with a lot of the same issues we are today, dealing with tourists and changes and all this other type of stuff. Just a thought, if we had someone in town who maybe it could be with the historical museum that could do something in that vein, talking to people who have had lots of interest in the town, people who have been leaders in the town, businesses. So that could be kind of a time capsule so that people can look back 40 years from now and see what life is in Ogunquit, kind of like looking back 40 years to that video. And it could be done with historical clips. It's just a bunch of people talking about their experiences here, how they got here, how long they've been here, and then different types of videos from town. So just a thought, if you did something like a time capsule, it might be something that we could leave behind for people in the future to look back on when they're trying to make decisions. So just a thought I'd throw out there.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
That's it right now.
All right. So it sounds like we've thrown out a couple of suggestions. I'd like to, sort of maybe give us some time to mull over these, and we can revisit the discussion and really think about if we want to do something concrete and exactly what that might want to be. And again, or if we want to do it in conjunction with any other committee, the chamber, etc.
Chairman, we'll let, we had one more that put their hand up right as I said there was no more.
Sure, let's take their comment.
All right, Alice, you should be able to unmute.
Hi there, everybody. It's Alice from the chamber. I just wanted to support what Jason had said, and that we are working with Parks and Recs about scheduling Bon Air for next June. So we'll be putting in a special event application for that for sure. But I love the idea that you guys have all been talking about to capture what is going on in 2020, because I think that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting historically going forward. So I love the video idea. And we've been talking about having that big stage on Shore Road And maybe we get a video screen behind the bands and we can play that right on the big stage, next June. Fingers crossed that we'll be able to have a big gathering then. So yeah, Jason, thank you for coming in and giving such a good summary and saving me from having to do that. I appreciate it. But yeah, we're full on board to celebrate next summer for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, let's move on to our final agenda item before citizens comment, and that is last but not least, our town manager report. Pat, do you want to take us away?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would like to start off with asking Town Clerk Chris Murphy to provide an update on things that happened just a week ago today, and things that will be coming up in November. So Chris, if you would.
Yes, so town meeting was just a week ago. We had 822 people vote, which is about 70%. It's a huge turnout. I issued 632 absentee ballots, which is a record, even in comparison to, I think, back in 2009 when we went secret ballot. So that was a really good turnout for that. The setup was a bit challenging on election day. I don't like having lines of people. I feel bad for people having to stand there. We're going to try to perfect that a little bit for November, anticipating a big turnout. Everyone was very compliant. Everyone wore masks. Several people wore gloves. Everybody sanitized. We cleaned throughout the day. All in all, I thought that it went very well. The lockbox was a huge success. And when we were getting ready to install that, I think the builder thought I was a bit crazy that I wanted it as big as it is, but there were days that I would empty that 3 times a day and it was almost full up to the door that I open to get the ballots out. So it was good that we did it as big as we did. So moving on to November. Nomination papers will be available starting next Monday for Budget Review Committee position for the unexpired term. I think it will expire in June of 22. Those papers will have to be in Friday, September 4th at 4 o'clock. Any petitions or changes from planning, any other departments will have to be in on September 4th as well. And we will start issuing absentee ballots again, beginning of October.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Does anyone, if I might, Mr. Chair, if anyone had questions for Chris before we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to say that as you were talking about November, it's a presidential election, right? So, which is traditionally when we have the most amount of voters in Ogunquit. So there's even a potential that we supersede our 70% come November. So appreciate all that you're doing and thinking about for the future.
Thank you.
Mr. Dolliver?
Chris, 632 absentee ballots sent out. How many returned?
Hang on, I'm on my work computer. I've got the report up. Let me just go in. So 608 were returned. So 18 didn't get returned.
Incredible. Okay, thank you.
Is pretty common. We never get them all back.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
Mr. Daly, did you have a question?
Just a comment. I'm personally not so concerned about COVID, and I should be, but I take personal responsibility for all of my employees, and I care about my neighbors and my family and the town employees. As you guys know, I've offered many PPE to many people. But when I went into vote, Chris and Pat did a fantastic job keeping everyone safe. Fantastic job. They couldn't have done it any better. So thank you, Pat and Chris.
Thank you.
Mr. Nguyen or Selectman Perry, Selectwoman Perry, I can't see you on, so if you want to say something, just unmute and announce yourself.
I'm eating Doritos and I didn't want anyone to really watch me eat them. So full disclosure for transparency here because I'm starving to death. What was your question?
Any questions or comments for Chris?
No, I felt comfortable with what she shared and I appreciate all the hard work that it took getting all those absentee ballots in.
Thank you.
Mr. Nguyen? All right. Thank you so much, Chris. And just a big thank you to not only you, but everyone who volunteered, as well as the other town employees who chipped in to help out. It really felt good. I will say that I was one of the people, because I was standing outside, who had my temperature checked the second time I came in, because the first time I came in, Chris, you had offered the people in line some if they wanted to vote absentee, and I was committed to wanting to vote in person this election, and so I came back. And then when I came back, my temperature, apparently after being in the sun, had rose a little bit. But I appreciate everyone's patience as I sat there and to ensure it wasn't just a fever, but just happened to be that I was hot from being outside, and within 5 minutes, my temperature had adjusted. But anyhow, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Continuing on, I do want to thank Chris again on behalf of everybody, because this was an unusual election, something we've never seen before. The challenges that were throughout this process, and I think Chris was very much on top of things, thinking ahead. As she said, making sure voters can vote is the first and most important thing that she does. So having a safe election and having people have a choice of to vote in person or to vote absentee, I don't think it could have gone any better. So I want to thank Chris, our staff, and our volunteers. We had a number of volunteers. At some point, half the people in the room had never been involved in an election before, and it was very eye-opening and a great civics lessons for many people. And I think we want to put a plug in for anybody who would like to be involved in the November election as a ballot clerk to please get in touch with Chris, because we will need more people in November because it will be such a big election. But thank you very, very much, Chris, your staff and volunteers. Continuing on with the town meeting, I want to thank everybody who voted. This was a scaled down town meeting from what we usually have for a warrant. The operating budget was the only thing that people considered. We did not have any of our usual ordinance amendments or capital improvement projects or anything else like that. But big thanks to the select board and the budget review committee for working together on developing that budget. And I think that people were very pleased with it because every one of the warrant articles passed for the budget, which is great. So we are in this fiscal year, so we're going to make sure that those things work. But for November, I think one of the things that was discussed is we will see how things go and whether or not there will be any sort of a capital improvement budget brought forward in November. Obviously, I think it's too early to say anything about that now. I just want to reassure people that the projects that have been previously approved and that are underway, that we also have a capital improvement plan and a plan for our inventory of equipment, so that will continue on for us to be considering. But a couple of major projects that are underway this summer or that will be very soon. Agamenticus Road, that is getting close to the final stages of a preliminary plan to bring to a public meeting. The issue is sidewalk, no sidewalk. The calls I get are in favor of a sidewalk, but we want people to be able to see that plan and see how it's going to affect their property. So we're doing individual outreach to property owners that may be most affected by widening the road to accommodate the sidewalk. It will affect some people's, mostly landscaping. So we want to be looking at that. But we're still on track for that project. It was always going to be this time of year where we would be doing those kind of discussions with the residents, getting a town community meeting underway, doing the preliminary preparation of the road this fall, and then wrapping it up next spring. So things could happen, obviously, between now and the winter that could get us off base. Bids will obviously make a big difference. Our engineers have told us that the bids they're getting on other projects have been very good, so we will hope that that will continue. Other major projects, we just put out bid packages for the replacement of the Captain Thomas Road culvert. You will recall that at first, when this was first discussed, I think, nearly 3 years ago, people thought it was going to be a little tiny project. It certainly is a more substantial project in terms of dealing with the drainage issues there. And we were able to get that engineered, get the bid package together. In addition to the funding that the voters supported, we were also successful in getting a Stream Smart grant that will help us complete that project. The project will get underway early this fall. The timing has to do with, since it is a culvert replacement, that there are fish and other wildlife that need to be taken into consideration. You can't disturb their habitat except for certain times of the year to not interrupt their life cycle. So that is very much on our minds to make sure that happens. We've done a preliminary test borings over in the seawall area in Perkins Cove, over near Auberge Hotel, to make sure that we know what the soils are going to be there in preparation for that project, which will need to be engineered and eventually designed and approved for funding. We had a preliminary discussion update with the Army Corps of Engineers about the dredge project in Perkins Cove. Again, this is a process. You have to get in the queue with the federal government for the funding cycle. But the Army Corps, first and foremost, has to know that this is something that is important to a community before they put a lot of resources into that. So we were joined with by people from the area that reemphasized how important that project would be to Ogunquit and our harbor. And I think that's it for updates on projects and town meetings. And happy to answer questions, given the hour. Many more things I could talk about, but we'll wait.
Any questions for Pat or comments? Pat, I have one question, and you may not know the answer just yet, so you could get it back to us, but that's around our application. We had submitted a grant for rebuilding the bridge in Perkins Cove, and wondering, have we heard back from that, and or when would we expect to hear if we got that grant or not?
I believe we are supposed to hear about that in September, so
okay,
fairly soon.
Coming right up. Thank you.
And we did have the support of the entire congressional delegation for that project.
Wonderful. Okay. Are there any citizens and or members in the audience who would like to ask any questions before we move on to citizen comments?
I have one, Jerry. You should be able to talk.
Yes, I just had a point. So we've bonded all these projects already and approved them? I'm not sure. Are we talking about ones that have already been bonded and approved by the voters, or were some of those yet to be bonded?
Okay.
And can we talk about the bonding process just a little bit to determine how that affects our long-term forecast for the future citizens of Ogunquit. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to answer it partially this evening, I think that is a more in-depth discussion that deserves the attention. But Agamenticus Road was approved by the voters as a bond issue, and that is part of our long-term financial planning. The dredge, the seawall and Perkins Cove Bridge, for Perkins Cove Bridge, the voters did approve the engineering costs of that. Those were not bonded. And then for the dredge, that is something that the federal government pays for. And for the seawall, that is a FEMA project.
And if I heard you correctly on the Captain Thomas culvert, that's something the voters have approved, as well as we have a grant.
That is correct. I'm sorry. That is true.
All right. Let's move on to 8.0, citizen comments. Would anyone in the audience like to take this time to provide any comments and or questions for the select board? We do have currently a 3-minute rule, and I got my timer out, so I will hold people accountable to that, as this board said we should be doing. And when you do introduce yourself, just state your name and the street that you reside on or have a home on or pay taxes on, etc. Tom, do we have anyone who's raised their hand?
Yep, Lazarus.
Michael.
Hey, guys. Thanks again. So I wanted to speak briefly about the bathhouse. And, well, it may be water under the bridge to some degree. It's a disaster, in my opinion. In the men's room, there's frequently no soap or no sanitizer. It's shocking that we built the new facility without touchless toilets or touchless soap dispensers or touchless disinfectant.
And urinals.
And urinals. The disinfectant is on the inside, so you have to disinfect and then open the door that everybody touches. The women's room today had at least 3 bathrooms that were not flushing on brand new toilets. The dividers are made out of Formica. They're salt water, I don't know, 100 yards away. How they're not steel, I don't know. So I think we need to talk to our contractors and see what our redresses are. And we also need to, there's also no social distancing. Every other urinal should be blocked off. It's a communal sink with 3 faucets in the men's room, and the middle one should be blocked off. And just repeating what I said earlier about COVID, there's no enforcement whatsoever, and almost never see somebody with a mask in there. So I think that somebody needs to take a look at what we paid for, $1.6 or $7 million, and find out why we have such a problem with the infrastructure in our new bathroom. Everybody was excited when they first walked in because it was basically an outhouse before. And so now we have a glorified outhouse, and it's really not a, it's not a good result.
Thank you for your comments, Michael.
Good job.
Mark.
I knew you would bring up this.
Mark Claremont, you're up.
Yes, hi. This is actually a really out of left field thing, and I'll admit it's a little bit self-serving and personal, but I don't know if other people are experiencing it, but I'm a big believer in the environment and done a lot of research on fertilizer. And unfortunately, since we've had to move over to organic fertilizer in my yard, my grass is not in good shape. Despite everything that I've done. From what I've looked at as far as research, what you're really looking at is hydrogen, which is what most fertilizers are made of and are considered completely safe. So though I completely do support what we're looking at with groundwater, I also feel that we may want to consider, and I know that there's some type of process in town, I don't know what it is, but I went from really green grass and working with mainly grass and having it work great to really almost at the point I may need to reseed. So I don't know if other people have experienced that, or if there's some other service I should use, but I was just curious what the process would be in town if you want to try to have them allowed to use regular fertilizer, because apparently there is a process. I'm just not sure what it is. And also if we may want to consider looking at that ordinance and see if it still makes sense in light of a lot of the science that I've read about. So that's all.
Thank you, Mark.
And Barbara or Pat, you can talk.
Hi, Barbara. Hi, Pat.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Barbara Ferraro.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm just reporting back in on the wonderful fuel initiative the Ogunquit Residents Alliance has been working with. Bobby Treen and myself have been working on this. And I'd like to report that we have close to 40 families that have been involved. And if you want to do a pre-buy of propane, $1.59, that's good until July 31st, and pre-buy for oil is $1.89, and that's good until July 31st. Please go on the Ogunquit Residents Alliance site. We now have 2 vendors working with us. One vendor who came forth that will work with condos. Some of the condos only have 1 tank with multiple lines, and they were willing to work with that. I also want to encourage, and some of you are business people that are listening, the businesses can be involved too, and we have not heard from businesses. Not sure why that is, but it's a great deal, and we welcome people to please not call, but go on and fill out the form, and then I'll get back to you. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Barbara.
And that is it right now. Oh, just kidding. Tom, you can talk.
Yeah, hi guys, Tom Sellers, 58 Bourne Lane. It hasn't been mentioned before, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank Madeline Mooney for her 3 years of service on the select board. Although neither she nor I got elected this time around, she did yeoman's work. I think she did good work for the town, and I thought that it should be recognized tonight, since this is the first meeting without her there. And I just wanted to say that, and I hope that you all will do the best there is for the town, and I look forward to working with you as a member of the Budget Review Committee.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments?
No hands right now.
Okay, so let's move on to our final agenda item. That's select board comments. Is there someone who would like to go first? Mr. Nguyen. You might want to unmute.
I want to thank Tom for bringing that up, but my plan was to wait till my comment to say that at the end of the meeting. I appreciated Madeline Mooney and working with Madeline Mooney. I thought the meetings were run very well. Some may not, but I do. I have spent a decade now on the select board, and I've worked with many chairs, and I've worked with many boards. And I'm very happy to say that I'm very proud of the work that she put in. She always prepared herself incredibly. And I think she tried to keep an organized meeting situation and try to keep things as civil as possible. So I appreciate, if you're listening, Madeline, I appreciate the work that you've done. And anytime anybody does volunteer work for the town, they should be commended. Whether you like them or not, you should commend the fact that they took the time and volunteered, because it is pretty much a volunteer. And it's not a very likable position most of the time. But again, I spent a decade and I've seen board members come and go, and I've seen good and bad. And I'm just hoping that just jump up from that over to us if this board can actually move on and do a great job for the town. And not worried about each other, but worried about the people that we're making decisions for. But thank you, Madeline. Nice job. I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
I'm gonna go eat.
Selectman Perry, Selectwoman Perry, I need to stop doing that. My apology.
That's okay. I want to echo Bob and Tom's sentiments. Having another woman on the board meant a lot to me, and I learned a lot from Madeline. It's nice to see women taking a role in politics. It's typically old white men, so it was really nice for a little while having it being different. I do encourage people to continue running and being a part of the process. It is our civic duty to be involved, and everything that Madeline taught me, I thought she was very graceful. I thought she was very kind and patient, and also strict when she felt she needed to be. Oftentimes in politics, I feel that when women have something not cheery and peppy or real nice to say, they come across as rude or unfair. This is something that we women have been combating for a long time. And so I think that she really did her job in a really graceful way. And I'll miss her very much, but I am looking forward to working with this new board. I hope that we can all continue to share the same respect for one another as we did then. The second thing I wanted to share is that the nation recently lost a very passionate leader and a wonderful soul. Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis. In 1965, John Lewis led the Selma to Montgomery marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. That was an incident that became known as Bloody Sunday, and armed Alabama police attacked unarmed civil rights demonstrators, including Lewis himself. I wanted tonight my public comment, my primary public comment to be a quote from him, if that's okay, from his 2017 memoir. And the quote is, "Freedom is not a state, it is an act. It is not some enchanted garden perched high on a distant plateau where we can finally sit down and rest. Freedom is the continuous action we all must take, and each generation must do its part to create an even more fair and more just society." I hope that we can all keep John Lewis's words in our hearts as we strive to create that fair and just society. Thank you.
Mr. Delaware?
I want to
Excuse
thank
me-
everybody for voting.
Excuse me for a second. Sorry, Rick. Selectman Perry, thank you for Selectwoman Perry. Wow, I got to figure that out.
You can call me
Selectwoman,
person.
there we go. Select person Perry, thank you so much for your comments this evening. Mr. Delaware?
Well, I was going to say thanks for the election, but I'll go to my second thing. You can call me Rick. Mr. Dolliver is a little too much for me, and so I just appreciate being called Rick. That's fine. Thanks for voting. It was a great turnout. I think the majority of the voters know my values and where I stand. I was quite surprised that 214 people voted on Tuesday. That just shows that people really wanted to get out there. Upcoming, the things that I'm concerned with. I know that the past board granted time for our taxes this July. I'm more concerned with the ones coming up in October to November, not knowing what's going to happen. So that's my budgetary concern right now is revenue looking forward to November taxes. A question to Pat, which I'm sure will come back, is if we do sidewalks on Agamenticus, is that an eminent domain issue where we take people's land, or is there a buffer enough that we don't take anybody's land? And two things that I have issues with. I have to agree with Michael on the bathrooms. I know we had a committee that looked after the bathrooms, and a few meetings ago, there was a punch list that was going to be done And in that punch list was a door that needed to be replaced, a window that had been busted since, and I'm talking March, April. These things, I think, got forgotten, and nobody seems to know where they are and why they aren't replaced yet. So I suggest that maybe we do a walkthrough as a board, not individuals, but get together as a board, wear our masks and do a walkthrough and look at the punch list and the checklist that was supposed to be done. It's going on to August, and I just don't believe they've been done. So I see some issues with the bathroom and I'd like to address them. And the last thing, I've sent a message, but I haven't received a response. I've got a few phone calls about a food truck up at the old trolley stop. And it appears on the weekends and then it disappears during the week. And I'm not sure that the old board discussed it, definitely not publicly. And I just didn't know if there was an approval for food trucks. And if there isn't, I just have a fear that you might see others popping up all over the place. And so I just wanted to get a handle on that. But I'd really, my big thing right now is the bathrooms. There's some lifeguard issues down there, and I want to make sure they're all looked into and taken care of. We spent a lot of money on a renovation that I'm not sure we got our complete dollars worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. On that note, I'll send you all an email, but let me know how you would like me to refer to you moving forward, whether it's first name basis, last name, etc. Mr. Daly.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can. One second.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, congratulations to Scott Vogel and Jerry DeHart for winning the election. Congratulations to Amy. I'm sorry, I have my glasses. It's dark here. Congratulations to Amy Forbes, Pat Hussey, Gary LaTulip, Wendy Levine, Gordon Lewis, and Bill Sawyer for their election to the Charter Commission. I'm glad they ran and I'm glad they won. I think all of them will be great on the committee. So thank you so much. And 1 second. Congratulations to Rick and Heath. I have found over the last 15 years that votes of Ogunquit can be unpredictable. But both of you, Rick and Heath, won by a landslide, which is rare in Ogunquit. I pray and I hope and I believe you both will take this responsibility put upon you seriously and do the right thing to bring this community together. For we are still a very divided community, so much more than I desired personally. And I know we can do better and become a community again like we were 5 or so years ago. So congratulations, Rick and Heath, and I look forward to working with you as well as with Bob and Lindsay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your comments and glad that you celebrated the win of all the folks who were elected last Tuesday. And as Pat said, I believe all of our budgetary items passed as well.
Yes. Except for one.
Which one was that?
I was shocked. Give me a second. I'm sorry. About paying taxes. I know it's irrelevant. Ignore it. But one failed. Number 40 failed. The only one. It's irrelevant, in my opinion.
Okay, I guess we're going to have to maybe talk about that or what that really means. But thank you, John. Thank you all. I agree, John, that we have, the 5 of us have, we're in a leadership position to do the best that we can. Part of that's working together. I prior sat on the board for about 6 months and did not always feel respected. But to offer another quote from John Lewis, and I'll finish with this. He said you have to have the capacity and the ability to take what people did and how they did it and forgive them and move on. With that, are there any other items for discussion, or I'll entertain a motion for adjourning?
So moved.
Rick for the first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Selectwoman Perry or Select Person Perry for second. All those in favor?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you all and have a great evening.